on it. Kevin, we're good to go. Thanks.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, no, that's
just
okay.
a little technical issue here. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is the hearing of the Committee of Adjustment for the Town of Grimsby. We're going to have to put Gary on mute. There we go. Okay. Sorry, I'm going to start again. I'll call the meeting to order. This is a hearing of the Committee of Adjustment for the Town of Grimsby. I'm going to first just introduce the committee members and staff present this evening. Committee members in attendance this evening are, I'm not sure about Adam Mottershead. Did Adam make it? He was a maybe. I don't see him.
On mute? Okay.
Dan Collins. Oh, we're going to have to put Gary back on mute. There, thank you. Dan Collins. Dan?
Hey, Kevin.
See, there he is. Sorry, Dan. Dylan Bailey. I see Dylan. You can just wave. Fabia Billing. I think Fabia is in person. Hi, Fabia. And myself, Kevin Ansias, as chair. Staff members this evening present are Harold Maddie.
Yes,
Director
he's
of
here.
Planning and Building. Okay, and Fiona Main, planner. Is Fiona here? Manny Singh, planner. And Dilhara Abhi-Wardeen, our administrative coordinator, who's leading the meeting here as well. Just a brief announcement regarding live streaming. Members of the public are advised that our meetings are live streamed by the Town of Grimsby. Individuals and media may be audibly and or visually recorded during this meeting. As a reminder, all electronic devices are to be in silent mode during our committee meeting. Just a brief outline of the meeting procedures. The purpose of the application and any relative correspondence will be heard, following which the applicant will be given the opportunity to address the application. Any person concerned with the application will then be given an opportunity to speak. At the conclusion of the discussion, the committee will render a decision and advise of any applicable conditions. Copies of the decisions will be mailed to the applicant or agent and to any other person who files a written request. To request a copy of the decision, please email the Secretary Treasurer at coa@grimsby.ca. The applicant, the Town of Grimsby, the minister, or a specified person or public body has the right to appeal either the decision itself or the conditions of consent to the Ontario Land Tribunal, OLT, within 20 days of the date of giving of notice under Section 17 is completed for consent, and also 20 days for a decision of a minor variance. Specified persons and certain public bodies include public utilities, but do not include an individual or community association. Everyone present will be given an opportunity to comment on the applications being heard. Please address your comments and questions through the chair. Each participant will be provided 5 minutes to speak. Each participant may speak only once. If you hear a comment presented by someone else, for the interest of time, please do not duplicate the remarks. When you're called, please ask that you also state your name and address for the record. Agencies commenting on applications may request certain conditions be imposed. Voicing objections to these conditions will not adversely affect the committee's decision. All members of the committee have viewed the properties on the agenda tonight and are familiar with the lands that are subject to the application. Disclosure of any pecuniary interest. Does any member of the committee have a pecuniary interest in the matters before us this evening? No, and I have none. Request for withdrawal. I understand there's been no request for withdrawal. Dilhara?
Correct.
Correct. Approval of the minutes from January 16th. Do I have a mover and a seconder regarding the minutes of the previous meeting?
Yep, I'll move that it be approved and seconded by Fabia.
Fabia, thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye or raise their hand. Was carried. Okay, we have 5 applications on the agenda this evening, so we're going to first announce the application, each one, and then Dilhara will go through a brief presentation which will outline the application and then go through any comments from staff or other agencies and or letters we've received from members of the public regarding it. And then we'll open it up to first the applicant can outline the application and maybe respond to some of the items that were raised. And then we'll open it up to committee questions first, and then members of the public will be asked if they would like to comment. So we'll start with the first one, which is A0324 at 340 Russ Road. Dilhara?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, let me just share my screen for the presentation. Wing, it doesn't come up.
Windows P.
It just says I've started sharing.
Where's your Zoom?
Oh, it's loading. Sure. Oh, okay, there we go. Thank you. Okay, sorry about this. We're having some technical difficulties. 1 minute, let me try again. And I have some people I have to let in on the waiting room. Wing, can you let the people in from on the waiting room? Thanks. Okay, so 340 Russ Road, application number A0324. The purpose of the application is to facilitate the construction of an accessory building for a home industry secondary to a residential use. And the variances requested are to permit a home industry secondary to residential use, where the home industry is permitted as a secondary use to an agricultural operation. To permit an accessory building height of 5.9 meters, whereas 4.5 meters is permitted. To permit access to the home industry by a separate driveway from the dwelling, whereas the home industry shall be accessed by the same driveway as the dwelling. And to permit an accessory building located within 64 meters of the existing dwelling, whereas 50 meters is permitted. And this is an image of the site plan, as was circulated in the notice of hearing. This is an image of the neighborhood for context. These are the current conditions of the site. And correspondence has been received by these agencies. So the Niagara region originally requested to defer until the private sewage system inspection review was completed. And planning staff concurred with this. Public Works offered the following comment and have one condition. Public Works staff are aware the applicant has already applied for and received a driveway entrance permit, which has already been installed. Therefore, an entrance permit is not required as part of these conditions. Town staff, the condition Public Works wanted is that town staff will require a lot grading and drainage plan, demonstrating that stormwater runoff will not negatively impact nor rely upon neighboring properties. The attached plan shows the proposed driveway located where the existing private storm pond is, which also extends to property line. Drainage shall be contained within the respective lot, and the lot grading plan shall show how the new storm drainage will drain without the pond and how it will be contained. This shall include grades that extend 5 meters beyond property line in all directions. No comments from the Ministry of Transportation, as the property is outside the MTO permit control area. And Grimsby Power commented to say that the applicant should contact engineering at grimsbypower.com to review servicing options. And over to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right, now, I also understand that there was recent correspondence from the region regarding a septic inspection. Did I not see that?
Yes, so the region had sent in, yes, some correspondence following that as of today, this afternoon.
So would that be something we should maybe get covered here before we open it up to the applicant? Because I think that's kind of relevant. Dylan has his hand up before. Sorry, Dilhar, I'm just going to ask Dylan what his
Yes.
question is before.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Even with this regional documentation that was forwarded like at the very end of the day, and we only received it about half an hour ago, I haven't been able to digest it. But also, we don't have the corresponding recommendation from town staff. So without that, I would move that it be deferred to a future meeting.
Thank you. Maybe we'll let Dilhara then outline the information first, and then we can make the decision on Dylan's comment or question. I guess I would like to comment on that too. I'm not sure why staff didn't, like, we had this before, and I raised this, I think, sorry about this last minute thing request, but we had this about 2 years ago on Ridge Road, where the applicant was disagreeing with the request for a septic permit, given that they were replacing a secondary dwelling. If they're not applying for services in the secondary dwelling, what difference does it make if the septic system is or isn't there or isn't functioning? Is this the right time to be triggering a septic inspection? And if it is, can it not just be made a condition of any decision? Like, I'm not sure it would influence our decision either way. We're looking at it from the zoning and engineering planning merits. Not sure if it would influence or be relevant to the discussion here. And that couldn't be addressed in a permit, just like a lot grading condition is being added or being suggested by engineering. So that would be my comments. I know Walter was going to meet with the people on Ridge Road about that, so I'm not sure why they concurred and just didn't comment on this one. Dilhara, maybe you want to go through the region comments?
Yeah, sure. Basically the conclusion, I'll just read out the conclusion that they provided. Regional Growth Strategy and Economic Development staff consider the proposed home occupation to be a non-agricultural use based on the information provided, which is not permitted in the specialty crop and prime agricultural areas by provincial and regional policies. Accordingly, it is the opinion of regional staff that the proposed home occupation is not consistent with the provincial policy statement and does not conform to provincial and regional plans unless the home occupation is confirmed to have legal non-conforming status and subject to the following conditions: that the applicant owner submit a stage 1 archaeological assessment completed by a licensed archaeologist and receive acceptance from the Ministry of Citizenship and Multiculturalism for the archaeological assessment. If the ministry requires further archaeological work to be completed prior to acknowledging this report, these reports must also be submitted to and acknowledged by the ministry to the satisfaction of Niagara region prior to clearance of this condition. No demolition, grading, or other soil disturbances shall take place on the subject property prior to the issuance of a letter from MCM through Niagara region, confirming that all archaeological resource concerns have met licensing and resource conservation requirements. And then the second point in the conclusion is that the owner be informed of the following advisory clause. Should deeply buried archaeological remains or resources be found during construction activities, all activities impacting archaeological resources must cease immediately, and the proponent must notify the Archaeology Programs Unit of the Ministry of Citizenship and Multiculturalism and contact a licensed archaeologist to carry out an archaeological assessment in accordance with the Ontario Heritage Act and the standards and guidelines for consultant archaeologists. In the event human remains are encountered during construction, all activities must cease immediately, and the Niagara Regional Police, as well as the Cemeteries Regulation Unit of the Ministry of Public and Business Services, must be contacted. In situations where human remains are associated with archaeological resources, the Ministry of Citizenship and Multiculturalism should also be notified to ensure that the site is not subject to unlicensed alterations, which would be a contravention of the Ontario Heritage Act. In addition, town staff should be satisfied that any local requirements for the application are met and that the proposed development is compatible with the surrounding area. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so the first, I guess we should ask the applicant first, because I know they did address the one reason why they were staff were asking for a deferral, which is the septic inspection. So it appears to have been done. Is the applicant here, Dave, or their representative?
Yes, they're
Do we
here.
know?
If you can come to the podium, please.
Maybe we'll let them speak, and then we'll deal with Dylan's request first.
Good evening. I don't know what you want me to say here, but I will.
Dave, we just get your. I'm assuming it's Dave. We just get your name and address for the record.
It's David Amarangan. I live on 340 Russ Road, and we submitted this. We came to this hearing because we wanted to build a bigger storage building on my property. So the first building that we built was built in 2008. Was kind of grandfathered in. We've been using this building now for 15 years, and over 15 years you accumulate a lot of stuff. And that being said, we've outgrown that building. I've had, but so nothing has really changed as far as we're not running a company out of there or nothing like that. It's just mainly 100% storage. So, but now I've accumulated a boat and a trailer and so hence we were looking for a bigger building so I don't have to pay people to store my stuff for me. Also we put a tent up behind my shop to accommodate some of the equipment I got, but that's kind of blew away in the first windstorm we had. So that didn't, it kind of ripped in half. And so really all we're trying to do here is building a bigger storage building so I can house my personal items, bigger personal items, but also some of the equipment that we have for the landscape company as well. Hence for a few of these variances here, the height issue was an issue because I can't really fit a trailer in a standard height building, right? It's not high enough. So we were looking for a little bit higher height. The accessory for putting the driveway in on the other side of the property, it just made sense to put it there. Otherwise, we're running a driveway 300 feet across property. It's easier to go down the road and just have a separate entrance to that building as well. To have the 64 meters away from the existing dwelling, it just made sense to put the building, the new storage building where it is. It just made sense to put it there. And then as far as to change the zoning, I think that happened because I was kind of grandfathered in, if I'm not mistaken, in 2014, I think that got changed or something like that. So now the zoning needs to be changed to accommodate so those are my comments. The region did show up and checked out the septic tank, which is 60 meters away from the actual storage building. We're not planning to put any septic in that building at all. It's just for storage. So it was explained to me the only reason why they came to check that I was in case the existing septic bed failed, they would have enough room to put in another one. So, and she said there was plenty of room. Also, all my neighbors around me have contacted me. that were submitted. This was also submitted to, and they have no problem with it as well. So I don't know if you have any other questions for me, but
Yeah, we'll open it up to questions now. Dylan, does that help or not help your request?
No, Mr. Chair, I think that does help. Hearing that it's all storage, when looking at the region's memo, I find that there's not a lot of congruency between what they're saying even in their memo and to what's been requested. So I guess I'm not maybe I just am reading it wrong, but I don't particularly understand it, as well as the need for, I do, but I just don't see a lot of congruency, and especially their memo when it talks about, accordingly, it's the opinion of regional staff that the proposed home occupation is not consistent with the PPS. I think we're sort of talking at cross purposes here. So, I would, after hearing from the applicant, I wouldn't mind hearing from staff what their sort of thoughts are, given we have heard from the region. We haven't received sort of a full recommendation from them, but if they have any comments, I'm more than willing to listen before we take action on this one.
Okay. Is Harold here that would like to address the applicant or Manny? Zohara, I'm not sure which planner would be able to comment.
Yeah, just a minute. Yeah, that'll be Fiona.
Oh, Fiona. Okay.
Hi, through you, Mr. Chair. In terms of the application, planning staff had no objection. Given I haven't had a chance to look at the most up-to-date information on the region side, but the use is grandfathered in essentially, so it is a legal non-conforming use, and it is just an accessory building. So even myself, I'd want to look and just confirm what the region had to submit, but from our standpoint, we were supportive of the variances.
Thank you. So question for Dave. Why push it so far from your house and close to your neighbor? Like, did your neighbor not have any comments about that? With a second driveway, it becomes an intrusion to his privacy versus yours. And it also, I know in the air photo, it shows a pond, and on the map it shows it as low line site plan. Is there a reason why it's pushed so far to the south?
We're more like a symmetrical thing, I guess. The pond is no longer there, so it's more symmetrical. The one storage building's on the one side of the property. The other kind of made sense just to put it there, and take it a little more room between the house and the shop. It makes more sense that way. That's all. So, but there was no real. I don't know. Just where we like to place it. No real hard reason to put it there. So
right, but it wasn't an issue for that neighbor because now you're pushing it next to his house.
Oh no, he didn't. I talked to them and they said, "Oh, absolutely not, no problem." There's a fair size. There's a fence there as well. That used to be that neighbor used to be my place. I lived there when I was 8 years old, so I've lived there for many years, but know the area quite well. And as far as I think the region was talking about drainage too. There's a swale that goes across all the backs of those properties, and it ends up in a pond on my neighbor's place. So it actually starts already at my neighbor on the left, on the north side, and it runs all the way through the back of my property, and then it goes into his property, and it all kind of goes in behind, and it ends up in a pond on 340 Russ. So that's where all the excess water has ran that way. I lived there for 40 years, 50 years, and it's always run that way. So, but yeah, as far as where it's situated, that's just a personal preference. It's not.
Right. And then services, just confirmed there's going to be no services in there. Water and septic in there.
Yeah, just the hydro, that's it.
Okay, any other questions from the committee first before we open it up to the members of the public, if there are any? me for those in person, Dilhara. Sorry, you can't see the.
Sorry. No, nothing from the public.
Okay, nothing for the public and no other committee members.
Correct.
Okay, if being none, then do we have a motion on the application as described, potentially with the conditions as read already once from Dilhara from the region and the town? Maybe like to move and second that?
I can move it, Mr. Chair, if you'd like.
Okay, thank you, Dylan.
Yeah, just give me
Maybe-
one moment. If you
Yep.
just want to give me a moment so I can pull up the resolution.
Yep.
And help me out if I forget anything, given some of the changes that have happened. So be it resolved that minor variance application A03-24 for 340 Russ Road to permit a home industry secondary to residential use, whereas a home industry is permitted as a secondary use to an agricultural operation for section 6.1.1, table 6 and zoning bylaw 1445 as amended, to permit an accessory building height of 5.9 meters, whereas 4.5 meters is permitted as per section 4.18, table 2 and zoning bylaw 1445 as amended. Permit access to the home industry by a separate driveway from the dwelling, whereas the home industry shall be accessed by the same driveway as the dwelling as per section 4.16 and zoning bylaw 1445 as amended, to permit an accessory building located within 64 meters of the existing dwelling, whereas 50 meters is permitted per section 4.16 in zoning bylaw 1445 as amended. Be approved because it meets the 4 tests with the following conditions. The first set of conditions being those described by our Secretary Treasurer from the region, and with the additional condition that town staff will require a lot grading and drainage plan demonstrating that stormwater runoff will not negatively impact nor rely upon neighboring properties. The attached plan shows the proposed driveway located where the existing private storm pond is, which also extends to the property line. Drainage shall be contained within the respective lot, and the lot grading plan shall show how the new storm drainage will drain without the pond and how it will be contained. It shall include grades that extend 5 meters beyond the property line in all directions. I so move.
Thank you. A seconder?
Before I second, Mr. Chair, can I just put a point of clarification on? We're using the term home industry in this application, but have we decided that it be accessory building? And should we make the appropriate changes on the resolution just to clarify that?
The home industry in this building only, you mean?
Well, it's, to permit a home industry secondary to residential use, if I'm reading this correctly, and it's the use of the building is for storage.
That,
correct.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, as I was reading it and I was reading that did come to my mind as well. So again, I'm not sure if I'm not sure if there's miscommunication or non-congruency between the town and the region and the applicant. So I read what was there, but I'm not sure if that's a classification of buildings that we need to.
So would you suggest, Dylan, Dan, that we make a slight modification to apply to storage in this proposed building only? Would that satisfy you and Dylan?
Before I answer that, Walter has his hand up, and I'd like to hear what he'd have to say about that.
I just saw that too.
Okay.
Walter, go ahead, Walter. Sorry, you disappeared there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The intent of the application, and I think the wording is accurate the way it is, because the principal use of the property is residential. The purpose of the variance is to permit the home industry to be on a residential lot as opposed to an agricultural lot. So that's the purpose of the variance. So the accuracy of the wording is 100%.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be defined to that storage building.
That's correct. So it's an accessory use to the principal use of the lot, which is residential and not agricultural. That's the purpose of the application. Thank you, Chair.
Does that help, Dylan and Dan?
I mean, if town staff are the experts, if they're okay with that wording and that means what it is that we're discussing, then I'm okay with it. I think it's probably the terminology when we talk about a home industry, that to me connotates, business, for example, but I'm happy to stay with the wording that's been proposed by the town as clarified by staff.
Mr. Chair, can I just say something? I think Walter just joined, so he may not be aware of what the region had said about this application, because, so can we just clarify that, Walter?
Yeah, Walter? Right. Go ahead, Walter.
Thank you, through you, Chair. That's correct. I haven't had an opportunity to digest the region's correspondence on the matter. The zoning bylaw does permit home industries in the Good Tender Fruit area. However, they're only permitted on agricultural lots. The purpose of this variance is to permit a home industry on a residential lot instead of an agricultural lot.
Okay.
But through you, Mr. Chair, I guess if I could ask Walter, so just so we're talking the same thing, this from the applicant is an accessory building, basically a storage building. Does that equate
That's
to
correct.
the word? That equates to that.
That's
Okay.
correct.
All right.
That's correct. It's the principal use of the property is residential. The owner of the property resides on the property, and they also operate a landscaping business. So it is the landscaping business. It's my understanding, based on conversations with the applicant, that it's the landscaping business that is to be operated out of this new building. And the purpose of the variance is to permit that to happen on the property.
Well, would you still feel more comfortable with calling it defining it as a storage building for the home occupant or for the home industry?
I would just, sorry, Mr. Chair, through you, I would like to hear from the applicant, because that's not my understanding of the use of the building. Again, I'm okay with the wording, but it's the first time I've sort of heard what it's being like. So if it's being used for just sort of personal storage, nothing else, and if that can be covered off by the wording we have, I'm fine. But if it's, or can it be, or will it be, or may it be used for a landscaping business? And if so, then I think there's no need for any of the changes, at all. I mean, I guess I'm happy either way, but if I could just hear from the applicant, just to be clear as to how this is going to be used.
Yeah. Is he still at the podium, Dave?
Yeah, so the storage building would be storing equipment, my own personal stuff, but also equipment from the landscape business. I think I said maybe I misquoted that, but yes. So I have equipment from the landscape business as well that gets stored in this building, but it's mostly, like, the bigger stuff is personals. But yeah, it is for both. It's always been, the other building has been there for storage of equipment. I have little tractors or whatever, right, and stuff like that. Lifting equipment, stuff like that. But that all has to get stored inside. So with that, that's the conversation we had with Walter on that as well. So I'm sorry if I misinterpreted that, but yeah, that's what it is for. So.
Okay, thank you. Does that help, Dylan?
Yes, I'm happy with the way that it's been read. Thank you to the applicant and to Walter for the clarification. I think I now can wrap my head around it. So,
okay. So you're okay with that,
as I so move, I ask for a seconder. Thank you.
Right. And so we're looking for a seconder then, with no changes. Dan, are you still comfortable with that?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with this now. When it was read, one more point of clarification, were the two conditions added on from the region
Yes, they were.
They were. Okay, great.
Yep.
Yeah.
So is that a seconder then?
I second, yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? Okay, approved, raise your hand or say yes. Opposed, if any, was carried. So there is a 20-day appeal period before it becomes final and binding. Thanks very much, Dave. Okay, then the next application we have is the A04-24-215 Mountain Road. Bilhara?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so the purpose of this application is to construct an accessory building. And the variance requested is to permit a maximum height of 4.36 meters for an accessory building with a flat roof, whereas 3 meters is permitted as per section 4.18, table 2, in zoning bylaw 1445. Sorry, it says my screen is being paused and it's not moving to the next. Let me stop sharing and reshare. Okay, yeah, so that's an image of this site plan that was circulated with the notice. And this is a close-up of the buildings on the site. This is an image of the neighborhood for context.
I don't know about you, but I'm not seeing anything on the screen.
Oh, I can see it moving on this screen. Okay, let me try again. I'll stop sharing and... Can you see it now, Kevin?
No, I don't see it. Do you see it, Dylan?
I do see it, yes.
Okay. All right, just carry on. I'll follow in the agenda. There's a package there too.
Okay. And next, we've got an image of the current conditions on the site. And this is what is proposed. Some drawings submitted by the applicant. And correspondence has been received by these agencies. Once again, the Niagara region has requested to defer until private sewage system inspection review can be completed, and planning staff concur with this. Public Works offered the following comment. They have no conditions. The comment is that Public Works staff note that the applicant already has an open grading performance bond that will remain open as part of the new proposed work. Public Works will not require revised grading plan as there is already one currently on file from the original construction works. MTO doesn't have any comments. It's because the property is outside the Ministry of Transportation permit control area, and Grimsby Power had no comments either. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Fiona, do you have any comments about this one as well? Like I know there's a request for deferral from the region again, but again, I fail to see how that's going to be relevant. That couldn't be addressed in a condition of approval. This is a brand new house, so I'm not sure what the inspection is going to show that they wouldn't already have in I'm going to say a very recent plan. Can you maybe enlighten us on this?
Through you, the chair, or Mr. Chair, I believe for us at least, we do concur with their decision. It is the private sewage system. They will have, I'm going to actually confirm, sorry. They did make a few changes in the past. Originally, they were going to have some connections there in terms of a washroom. I believe that was taken out, but it is still in terms of the size of and the location of it. I don't disagree that they would look into this regardless. I don't think I can provide much more information apart from that, but we do just agree that it should be looked at, even in just future possibilities for sewage system connections, etc.
Okay, thank you. Dylan, you have a question?
No, if you would like the applicant to go first, then I'll ask my questions
okay.
after. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Oh, no problem. Is the applicant here? Would they like to elaborate on the request?
Good evening, members of committee and planning staff. My name is Ava Barnett, and I'm with SMPL Design Studio. So I was made aware by the regional staff that they wanted to defer, and they hadn't had time to conduct their site visit. And this was echoed by planning staff, so I did not submit a presentation. It was my understanding that staff wanted to defer. I also thought this could be made a condition of the building permit. Just historically, this house isn't that old, and the septic was over-engineered by the owners to accommodate even more than the few fixtures that we are noting in this accessory structure. But I do understand that they wanted to have the site visit, and they're going out there tomorrow afternoon.
So you're okay with the deferral request or recommendation?
Well, we did want to move ahead, but we were told everyone did want to defer. So we're very hopeful to get back on the agenda for March and submit a full presentation and receive comments from outstanding comments from planning in the region before that hearing.
Okay, so just to give us a clue what's coming, what is it proposed for? An accessory dwelling, but for what use?
Well, it's sort of multi-purpose. It's kind of like a cabana. There's some storage area. There's a deck off the pool. The pool is proposed for the back as well. There's an indoor golf simulator, which is why we're asking for the extra height. There's like a fun rec room area.
Okay, then we'll deal with the deferral request or recommendation, sorry. Dylan, did you want to comment or request or make a motion?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to sort of, I don't have any objections to this. But the only thing would be is that it would be conditional upon sort of, the condition would be that the applicant would need to, or we would need to add to the motion that the applicant would agree to any conditions received by the region. But with us not having that or further comments from staff, I would likely in this case prefer to defer. It's sort of sad that they couldn't get it done before our meeting. So I just find it unfortunate.
I would agree with you there too.
I have a feeling that when we come to this in March, it's going to very much be like the last one that we sort of had and will be very straightforward, but applying due diligence, I would so move that this application be deferred to a future meeting when we have comments from the region and town staff.
Okay, that's the motion. Seconder?
Yeah, I'll second that, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Dan?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Any further discussion on this motion to defer then? All those in favor say aye or raise their hand. Opposed, if any, was carried. So hopefully we'll see you at the next meeting then, Ava.
Thank you. I had a hard time unmuting.
Oh,
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. We'll see you then. Okay, the next application is for A3223, 18 Park Road South. Ilhara?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me share my screen. Okay, so the purpose of this application is to facilitate the construction of a privacy fence. And the variance requested is to permit a maximum privacy fence height of 2.15 meters in a residential zone, whereas 2 meters is permitted. This is an image of the site plan, which was circulated with the notice of hearing. This is a picture of the neighborhood for context. These are some images submitted by the applicant about current conditions of the site and what we are considering. And correspondence has been received by these agencies. Planning has no objections or conditions. And the following agencies have no comments or conditions. That is Public Works, Ministry of Transportation, and Grimsby Power. Written communication was received from a neighbor who does not wish to speak at the meeting, and I will read that out now. I'm Vicky Lee Hardy, power of attorney, the daughter of Thomas and Barbara Hardy. My parents do not wish to talk at this meeting, however, they will be present. They wanted their voice to be heard on this issue, and hence, let me stop sharing. And hence, the following facts have been addressed in their written report that follows. We, Thomas and Barbara Hardy of 7 Bell Avenue, Grimsby, Ontario, wish to voice our objection to this minor variance application A3223. 7 Bell Avenue backs onto 18 Park Road South. In the summer of 2023, I'm sorry, I'm not sure how to pronounce this name exactly. Ivica Ivan built a fence between our backyards. According to his drawing, it is 54 feet long. We estimate that at least 1/3 of the fence on the north side to be approximately 94 inches in height or 2.39 meters above the ground. First, there is a bylaw in existence which every homeowner in Grimsby must accept and obey. A standard was created by individuals on the Town of Grimsby Council where everyone is to be treated equally. Quite simply, there is a bylaw in existence that every homeowner in Grimsby must accept and follow, and there should be no exceptions to this bylaw. That bylaw 1445 states that the maximum height of a fence can only be 2 meters, which equates to 78.74 inches. Ivan knowingly ignored the bylaw by some 15 inches. Rules and bylaws are created for all members of the Grimsby community. There are no exceptions. Our second point is that Ivan has been a contractor builder for many years. He should be aware of the process in obtaining information regarding bylaws as it pertains to the building of structures, that is, fences. As with other cities and towns, bylaws are written for the betterment and enjoyment of the citizens of that community. Ivan, a builder, knowingly built this fence above this specified height in bylaw of 1445. If this variance is allowed, it would undermine the process and the reasons for these bylaws being instituted in the first place. The third reason is that Ivan openly ignored rules created by the Town of Grimsby. There is a reason why the height limit was set at 2 meters. Citizens need to adhere to this height restriction bylaw 1445 so that fences in adjoining properties are built in uniform height for a much cleaner appearance and to not inhibit neighbors in their community. Ivan built his fence over the bylaw 1445's stated height of 2 meters, 78.74 inches, by 0.39 meters, that is 15.35 inches. He has also demonstrated his own measurements on a map on the back of this application in red pen. This proves that Ivan purposely neglected bylaw 1445 without any consideration of his neighbors. Therefore, we, Thomas and Barbara Hardy, strongly encourage the Town of Grimsby to deny the minor variance application and order Ivan to remove the fence height of 0.39 meters in order to create a proper appearance in respect to his neighbors. He also needs to follow all the guidelines administered by the individuals who represent the public for the town of Grimsby. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dahar. Is the applicant here? And wish
Yes.
to speak to the application and address any comments?
Can you come to the podium, please?
Hi, I'm Ivan Shturkai. I live at 18 Park Road South.
Okay, would you like to outline the reason for the request and maybe respond to the letters that we received, or the letter?
Well, corresponding with the Hardys in my backyard, the elevation is 5.5 feet difference in height. So I stepped my fence down 4 sections at almost 14 feet wide to make the fence look decent from my end. And they can't see anything from their end because they have it's all cedars. So they have their privacy because they have a pool in the backyard.
Okay, any other comments? Otherwise, I'll open up to the committee members first. Any questions from the committee? Dylan?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just so I'm clear, so is the height that we're, is the increased height just along the section all across the back? Or is it also along the side?
Ivan?
Meaning like it steps in the back, but the side is just straight across.
And is that the side that's straight across, is that the 2.15 as well?
Yes.
It is, okay. So it's okay. And just, sorry, Mr. Chair, could I just ask a few questions? If that's okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
So the increase, so the neighbors have said it's 2.39 meters, you've put in for 2.15 meters. That sort of variance, you could say, in the height is due to the elevation of likely the slope between their property and yours. Is that where there's sort of the discrepancy?
Yes, it's the neighbor to the left of me. And yeah, like it slopes right down. So I don't see where it's 15 inches, but.
How did the variance come to the town's attention? Like, what brought it to? Obviously, someone's done some measuring here. So what triggered the variance? The fence was already built.
It was my neighbor to the right of me that filed the complaint.
So, to the north?
Yes.
So not the people that wrote the letter. So I didn't catch their names.
No.
And are they here this evening, Dilhar?
Yeah, they're here.
Oh, they're here. Okay, so they'll have an opportunity to speak after we ask questions here. So is there any other questions from the committee members then? None? Then, Dilhar, maybe you can open up to members of the public that were here to comment on this application.
Yeah. Anyone who wants to comment?
They can come forward to the podium and give us your name and address for the record.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair. StarTech, initial R for the record. First name Richard, address 10 Catalpa Court, Grimsby, Ontario. I'm here on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Cerrone, who reside at 16 Park Row South, which is the neighbor to the north of the applicant. I'd first like to start by saying good evening to the committee, Mr. Chair, and that my clients essentially mirror the comments of the Hardys that committee member read the letter for. I would also like to start off by saying that the comments of the applicant are inaccurate, and I would go go as far as saying disingenuous in that the measurements on the north side of the property, which border my client's property, are 2.15 meters. In fact, my client, who is here beside me, Mr. Cerrone, wife in the body of the court, has measured the property or the fence on the north side of the applicant's property, bordering my client's lands. And those measurements range from 2.29 meters to 2.39 meters, similar to the measurements that the Hardys took. There are no significant swales on the property. There are no significant grading issues on the property, and I will touch on that momentarily. I know the time is precious, so I will move on. The pictures that were shown as far as the fence is concerned do not represent the actual aesthetic of the property. The fence that is constructed on my client's side of the property is nothing short of horrendous. And I would suggest that the fact that the applicant is a builder and the applicant did build this fence in the summer of 2003, some 7 months ago, had no regard for the bylaws or the rules of the town of Grimsby. The applicant did not present himself to the town asking for a variance, which is most common. And when we look back at the applications that have been brought before this committee, most, if not all, of the applicants that are present or presented, the applications that is, ask for the variation or the variance in advance of doing the work. The process should not be asking for forgiveness rather than permission. The starting point for all residents of the town of Grimsby should always be asking permission and dealing with issues as they arise. If not for neighbors bringing this issue to the committee, the applicant would still be operating on his own accord. He had no concern for the neighbors. He had no concern for the rules of the town of Grimsby. He had no concern for the bylaws. And I would go as far as saying that he had no concern for the Committee of Adjustments here in presenting himself in good faith, asking for an amendment to the bylaw. I think we have to start by looking at the application itself. And if we look at the application itself, paragraph 7 of the application was omitted. And paragraph 7 of the application asks, why is it not possible to comply with the provisions of the bylaw? There are no reasons. The applicant has not presented one valid reason to this committee why he's able to comply or not able to comply, with the provisions of the bylaw. The applicant talks about staggering his fence. The bottom line is that from ground level to the top of his fence is anywhere between 2.29 and 2.39 meters. I don't know if any members of the committee or if there's any reports from the town of Grimsby as to the measurements, but obviously there was a violation, an infraction levied upon the applicant, and that's just not done without any evidence to support the height deviation from what's allowed by the bylaw. So someone obviously measured, and again, unless we're going to measure a further time or have someone from the town measure a further time to verify the height of the fence that is currently in place on the north side of the property that borders the Cerrones. I have Mr. Cerrone here and his wife who have done their own measurements, and they are in line with the Hardys residents, which are the neighbors to the rear of the property, which is on the west side of the applicant's property. The omission of paragraph 7 of the application is significant, I would suggest, in two regards. One, the information provided by the applicant in the paragraph, if he had answered, would have helped the affected landowners understand the reason for the application. And omitting why the variation is needed and he could not comply with the bylaw is essential for the public, the neighbors, the affected property owners, to present themselves to this committee. So I would say that the application of the applicant is lacking in that regard. It would help the neighbors assess the need for the application, and most importantly, help the neighbors self-assess the reasonableness of the application. So those are the three factors that would come into play on the first instance of why the application should include a detailed description in paragraph 7, not simply omitting it. He has no reason why the applicant, that is, has no reason why the bylaw could not be complied with, and therefore he chose to admit it, just like he chose to build without a permit, or without permission, I should say, from the municipality. The second reason why paragraph 7 is crucial is that it would allow the neighbors to better consider the impact of the application being approved. They don't have all the information in front of them. They don't know why the applicant had to bring the application. And had there been a valid reason included in the application, the attendance tonight might have been moot. I would next want to touch on the reason for the application. And the reason for the application is to facilitate the construction of a privacy fence. Again, we're here asking for forgiveness instead of permission. It had already been built. The fence is far greater at 2.29 and 2.39 meters than what the bylaws would allow. Again, the applicant did not report himself or ask permission from the town of Grimsby. Was not concerned with the process, and if we look back, as I mentioned, in the last 5 years, virtually everyone who was coming to ask for a minor variance to this committee had done so in advance of their construction. I've reviewed also the memorandum that was issued from the town of Grimsby approving this. It indicates that it was due to the general slope down of the lands from south to north. We haven't seen any grading plans, any grading surveys. We haven't seen any reports from anyone who attended at the property to suggest that this fence height was necessary in that regard. The fence runs east to west. The fence does not run north to south. The properties at 16 and 18 Park Row South are east-west facing. And the fact that the memorandum indicated that it was necessary is not supported by any other factual information or commentary.
I'm just going to warn you on the time, Mr. Startek, just another minute.
Okay.
Good.
I'm not sure if anyone from the committee or the town has viewed the property from the applicant's side or from, more importantly, my client's side. There are no slopes or swales that would justify a height of 2.29 or 2.39 or even 2.15. The 2.0 meter limit would be well suited for the neighborhood, as the Hardys mentioned in their letter read by their daughter, that it is uniform and clean for the neighborhood. The memorandum of all other applications before this committee tonight was approved by Mr. Basic. This one was not. I'm not certain as to why the memorandum that was provided was not approved by Mr. Basic. But I think that we have to, in closing, look to the intention of the applicant. We have to look at the fact that if not for someone measuring the fence and reporting it, he would not have. And in that regard, we cannot take the applicant's word that the north side of the fence or the north side of the property line, that fence is limited to 2.15. That fence is 2.29 to 2.39. We heard at the west side of the property it is 2.39. These are significant deviations from the 2.0, and I think that this committee has respectfully no other option but to disallow the application for the minor variance and make an order that the applicant comply with the bylaw for the 2.0 meter fence height. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your comments. Any other members of the public before we open it up to the committee again for further questions and or the applicant? Fiona, Dillhara, is there anybody else?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay, are there any questions, follow-up questions from the committee? Dylan?
Mr. Chair, if I could just start, if there's any comments on what's been said by either the applicant or the neighbor's representative by town staff.
Staff? Fiona, you had signed the report. Do you have any comments or respond to the comments raised by the neighbors?
I do. Through you, Mr. Chair. From our understanding and how we reviewed it, we confirmed with the applicant that it's 2.15 meters at its highest point of the fence. He did mention it is staggered. We do have photos too to help with reference, and this is what I help to base my review on. I don't know if Dohara, you can share them with or put them up, but the intent, like we mentioned, is to maintain the privacy of the property, and there is a slope on the applicant's side. And once again, if the photo is there, I don't mind sharing it as well, but it helps maintain it further on their side. It is 2.15 meters. It is what we would consider minor. It is already constructed as well. We do understand that in terms of planning context, the property itself, property owner is permitted to build a fence on their property line. We confirm that, or not on property line, sorry. Let me rephrase that. On their property, as long as it's not on the property line, it is permitted.
So this is one of the pictures, Fiona.
So if you can see, there is a slight slope, and the owner, based off of our discussions, wanted to provide more privacy. If you can provide also the other image as well, just for context of the other fence.
Just give me a minute.
Yeah, no worries. But once again, it is just like a slight increase, given the 2.15 meters, but
You
we wanted
know, just confirmation though, you mentioned, was it measured? Like, is there confirmation that if we're asked to approve something that's 2.15, did somebody verify that that's the maximum height of this entire fence? Like, it doesn't exceed, like I've heard 2.29, 2.39. And if there's two sides to a fence, obviously, what side are they measuring it from? Like if the grade slopes?
We confirmed with the applicant that they measured from the other side of the fence, so not their property, from the ground to the top part of the.
Okay, but the town doesn't independently measure it, so then it's up to the app. If this were to be approved at 2.15 and it's found later to be 2.29 or 2.39, however they define the measurement, they still aren't in compliance, right? Like if there's no survey or independent measurement to verify that what we're approving tonight actually exists. So it's still in non-compliance, in other words, if there's no independent measurement of it, because we've heard conflicting measurements here already.
That's correct. That's correct.
And if it's the owner's already built it, I mean, that's no reason to approve it, but then you're also relying on them to provide us with a measurement. It kind of lacks a little bit of credibility, in my opinion, to base it on their measurements if we've heard conflicting measurements from another owner on the other side of the fence. So anyways, that's just my comments before we get too far.
I wasn't aware of the other height. Based off of what we were told, it was 2.15 meters at its highest point. So it's my first time hearing of the 2.39. So I apologize for that if that's something that we weren't able to confirm. But.
And further comment about where is it measured and taken to based on the style of that fence? Is it the highest
point of the fence
piece of wood, or is it the main fence itself?
The highest point.
Okay.
Dan has a question, Mr. Chair.
Dan? Yeah, thanks. Dan, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If the applicant or the application is for 2.15 meters, and it does turn out that it's 2.39, is there, what would happen at that point? Maybe this question is more to Fiona. Would this be a bylaw issue where someone would go and measure? Would we end up back in chambers here for another variance if we do find it's higher? Like, what would be the repercussions if it is higher than 2.15?
I am honestly not entirely sure. This is my first time dealing with this, but given the situation, I do believe, or something I'd be comfortable doing, is going to measure it again, and as a condition that it is 2.15, it's permitted. I don't know if that's something that could be considered, but it would likely go through a variance again.
I think the best solution would be to defer it until we confirm the measurement and what it is legally that we're dealing with, so that it's approved once or denied once and for all based on the facts. If there's a dispute as to the measurement, that's just my suggestion, but I'll defer to the other committee members. Any other questions from the committee for staff and or the owner? None. Is there any other members of the audience that would like to speak to this matter, or members of the public?
Sure. Thank you. Bill Cerrone here. So we're kind of...
Can we get your address too? Sorry.
Oh, I'm at 16 Park Road South. So I initiated the bylaw infraction through Mr. Henry Bowes. That's how all of this started, okay? So we're spinning our wheels a little bit here. There's one drawing, which I can show these two people here. I can show you 4 drawings of the fence, 22 feet apart. Can I bring these forward? Can I bring these to you? Yeah.
You can hold them up. I can see them from here, believe it or not.
Okay, I'm gonna give it to him.
He wants to give it to Dan. Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So this one here is right at the front of the property, like the garage in his house, fronting on Park Road. There it is, 90 inches. Can you see that?
I could when you're at the podium.
Oh, I'm sorry. Here?
Yeah, perfect. That's perfect.
Okay, so there's Mr. Chair, there's 90. Now, I couldn't do the whole tape. You know, I even put a piece of paper there to show you it's on the bottom.
Yeah.
Now, this is on my side, but let's not lose sight of this so-called higher property. The higher property is way back. It may be an inch on his side if I want to give him some benefit, which I don't want to. It's 90 inches. That's at the furthest point. Second point, 22 and a half feet in. Am I doing this right?
Yep, I can see it.
Okay.
Straight ahead is perfect.
87 and a quarter inches, if we want to be precise. I'm a precise guy, okay? Number 3, 22 and a half feet in again, 88 inches. Number 4, 22 and a half feet in, 86 inches. So I just did those 4. Now, remember what I say to you. I called Henry Bowes in. But at the same time, he built the fence neighboring the Hardys, first of all last summer, then he built our fence. This is the Hardys fence. See it?
Yep.
Okay. My fence is beside it with the little doohickeys on top. That's 78 inches high. Now, it's not too difficult to realize 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 boards, 5.5 inches, 30 inches. Hey, his dirt may be a little bit higher there, take off the 30 inches. That's why I believe what Vicky Lee is saying is 2.39 meters, if my correction. There's a visibility right there. So you can defer, you can go and measure again, but when the town tells me that they've measured it already, I hate to tell you, I have real concerns. Because everybody knows how to use a tape measure.
Right, but Mr. Bowes, you didn't provide any comments or include or dispute the 2.15. That's my only concern, is that we're basing it on the applicant's numbers in here, and this is the first time that we're hearing that there's a discrepancy of the 2.15. So the request, if it were approved, would still make it non-compliant.
Yeah. Look, I don't want to take any more time, okay? I just want to say this one last thing. This is my feeling. If somebody is asking for 2.15 and it's not 2.15, and you put that information out in the marketplace for neighbors to make a comment on, and the information isn't accurate, it's my opinion from my business experience, it's got to be denied. Thank you very much.
So could we ask you, while you're there, could we ask you what the concerns are? We heard your lawyer indicate there's concerns with the look of it,
Let me show you the look.
But let's just say he built a legal fence 2 meters high, and you still didn't like the look of it. You wouldn't have any say in that. Is there a difference?
No, I understand that. I mean, we're here only for the height, okay?
Right.
Now, wouldn't it be nice, I have to ask you, what's a neighborly fence? Mr. Antonides, can I answer that rhetorical question? Let me just show you. There's my fence at the back, okay? Again, this has nothing to do with the height, but you asked, so I'm going to tell you. There's my fence at the back.
Yeah.
What you see on my side, you see on his side. I've done this for years. That's fence number 1. There's fence number 2. It's not even a fence. It's a partition to give him some separation, which I built 2 years ago because he's got this thing going on in his backyard. What you see on my side, you see on his side. Okay? It's pretty nice, right? I'm not putting words in your mouth. That's fence 2. You know, a little separation between fence 2 and fence 3 that I built 15 years ago. Let's get to his fence. Since you brought it up. Are you kidding me? Really? Are you? This guy's a builder. And he puts 2x6s, 1 foot on the top and the bottom, and I have to look at that crap? Come on. You know? That's his fence. I'm going to say one other thing. There's his fence. Again, you can't do anything on this. I have to accept this, and I'm willing to accept this. I'm just trying to show you what I'm dealing with. Let's continue. So there's a space in between, okay? First of all, he builds a fence against a perfectly good fence. It's his right. He can do it. Let me show you what he does at the end. Now, he built his fence past my fence by 10 feet so that if I ever had to repair my fence back there, which I probably never have to do, but the stake for the property's back there. I don't know if you can see that yellow thing that I put up. I can't get to the stake if I ever wanted to pull a string. So why do you think he continued back? It's obvious. That's all I can say, sir. Okay?
All right, thank you for those comments.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
No problem, that's what we're here for. Any other questions from the committee members or Fiona? Any suggestions for measurements? Do we have a legal interpretation of what is the highest point, or what is the measurement taken from? Because, like you say, there's no point in approving or denying, but approving something as 2.15 when in fact it's more. Fiona?
Yeah, through you, the chair, our measurements is from ground to the highest point. That's what we are based off of just best practice. We don't have a specific part in our bylaw, but that encompasses what, majority of other bylaws or similar bylaws speak to. So that's what we're comfortable with. And if I could just add one more thing, based off of that we got this minor variance, or it came to be due to a complaint, which is from the bylaw enforcement. I believe that we also didn't receive any comments from our bylaw officer, enforcement officers.
That's what I was going to ask you next.
Yeah. I was not aware of anything if it was raised. I think that's something onus on also the applicant to be respectful and honest with the height as well. But both of those were taken into consideration when doing the review as well.
So you're still of the opinion that you're supporting this request?
Yeah.
At 2.15?
That is correct. But
So to Dylan's question, what happens when it's 2.25 if the owners tomorrow call out Mr. Bosey again, and they find that it's 2.29? Are we back here with another variance if it's approved at 2.15? It's denied. We're not dealing with it anymore, but. Committee, help me out here. Any thoughts on this?
Mr. Chair, I'm prepared to make a motion after what I've told, and I would let the committee then decide or make further comments.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry, let me just get the
Go
right
ahead, Bill.
document.
Excuse me, sorry. Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Chair. Walter has a comment.
Oh, Walter, see your hand up, but I'll trust that.
Hello.
There you are. Oh,
Sorry for my
he's in
appearance.
person.
I rushed back to get here from my vacation. So,
Because you saw Fiona dealing with this, and you said I better show up.
yeah. So, I just want to clarify a couple of things. Town staff did not go out and measure the height of the fence. We rely on the applicant to identify, and I believe we asked the applicant to confirm the height. We asked the applicant to verify the height of the fence. We do not go out and measure the height of the fence in advance of the application. We know there was a dispute, and we wanted to confirm with the applicant that the measurement is accurate. So that's one point. We did not go out and measure the fence, as may have been suggested by some of the speakers. Secondly, I wanted to make the point from a procedural perspective. If a variance is received for 2.15 meters, and it turns out that the height is actually higher than that, then the fence will actually still be non-compliant to the requirements of the zoning bylaw, and we'd be required to ask the applicant to either make the fence compliant from an enforcement perspective, make the fence compliant, or to apply for a variance to legalize the height. So from a procedural perspective, that's what we would follow. So if a decision is made tonight and the committee is not sure, based on the evidence that you've heard so far at this hearing about the height, the committee obviously has the option of requesting a deferral and to remedy the concern about the height, or what the actual height is, to actually have somebody go out and measure the height of the fence from a neutral perspective.
Right.
Which would be the town.
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct. So we thought Mr. Bosey measured it as part of the complaint, but now you're saying he didn't, or we don't have his report to verify it. Okay. Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I suggest, would it be okay if the applicant decided if we deferred or if we go ahead with this? I'll put that to you, Mr. Chair.
The applicant, I want to, yeah, okay. Is the applicant here?
Yeah.
Do you prefer that we deal with this application as submitted, or would you request that we defer it to independently verify the measurement of the fence?
Well, do you want ground elevations from front and back and from my end?
We're not going to make that call. We'll leave that to staff to decide what the height of the fence is, because that's what we're going to rely on their interpretation of how they measure the fence. So we'll leave that up to them.
Yeah, that's fine.
Submit a report.
Okay. I'm good with that.
Okay. There's your answer, Dan.
Thank you. So should can I make a motion then?
Yeah.
I find it resolved that minor variance application A3223 for 18 Park Road South to permit a maximum privacy fence height of 2.15 meters in a residential zone, whereas 2 meters is permitted as per section 4.36 in zoning bylaw 1445 as amended, be deferred until another meeting, whereas we can verify the measurements.
Thank you. Seconder?
I'll second that.
Fabia, thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor to defer?
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
I went too fast.
Sorry.
Dylan,
Can we also, I believe that what was missing from the application, and it could just be that we didn't get it in the package, but the rationale for the
Paragraph 7 and 8.
Paragraph 7, please, as to why.
There's a couple of paragraphs missing there.
Yeah, 7 and 8 and a few others. So if that can be, we ensure that that's.
Are you okay with that amendment, the suggested amendment, Dan?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that.
And I just wanted to, and I'll just sort of, my comment again will be that I will not support the deferral. I wish that it would be denied given what we've heard tonight. But if you call
Okay.
the question, I'll vote accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. Then voting on the motion to defer, we have a motion and a second. Move seconder. All those in favor to defer, raise your hand. Opposed, if any. It was carried. So we will potentially see you at the next meeting then to bring this application back, hopefully with the accurate, independent, or third-party measure. Okay, thank you. Next application is A20-23 for 4 Windward Road. Dilhara?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me just share my screen. Okay, so the variances requested for this application are to permit a maximum building height of 54 meters, that is 15 stories for the west building, whereas a height of 44 meters or 12 stories is permitted. To permit maximum height of 87 meters, 25 stories for the east building, whereas a height of 69 meters, that is 19 stories, is permitted. To permit a minimum of 1 parking space per residential unit, exclusive of visitor parking spaces, whereas a minimum of 1.25 parking spaces per residential unit are required. And finally, to permit required parking spaces for commercial uses on another lot located at a maximum 500 meters from the subject lot, mixed-use high-density zone, whereas required parking for commercial users in the downtown zones may be provided on another lot, provided such lot is located not more than 122 meters from the subject lot and the commercial use. This is an image of the site plan that was circulated with the notice of hearing. This is an image of the neighborhood for context. And these are the current conditions on the site. Correspondence has been received from these agencies. Planning staff, I will just summarize for you. Planning staff have no objections. The variances are considered minor in nature and meet the 4 tests. Public Works had 1 comment regarding the parking variance. Staff are supportive of the proposed variance requested regarding parking. Based on works completed through the town's parking study in the Grimsby on the lake area and background work completed by staff in reviewing the site, the proposed parking ratio has been deemed appropriate. The increase in the distance required for parking in the downtown zone to a maximum of 500 meters is appropriate, as this provides flexibility for the town to provide parking within a reasonable walking distance to the downtown core. Grimsby Power had comments to say that the applicant must retain an electrical consultant to create the electrical design for the proposed buildings. And we recommend that the proponent contact Grimsby Power at the earliest opportunity to review servicing options. I also have some correspondence received from one of our staff members. And I will read out his bulleted points. So this is correspondence from Michael Palomba, our senior transportation engineering technologist. He said that the proposed rate of 1 space per unit is consistent with what has been approved in this area. 1 space per unit is extremely common practice in high-density development areas. The development will be meeting all other zoning ratios for other users on the site. Based on the findings from the parking study, existing municipal supply is sufficient and it is anticipated to be sufficient up to 2041. Based on data collected at other residential buildings in the area, residential private parking is sufficient. It is recommended that the town construct a new municipal lot in the area. This lot would provide additional long-duration parking options available within the downtown core and add additional capacity available to visitors and residents. A cash in lieu policy is recommended as a tool to provide staff with options to deal with requests for parking reductions. The money collected through this mechanism would be used to improve, expand, and optimize municipal parking in Grimsby on the Lake. If cash in lieu payments for this site are to be made, the money would be used to make up for deficiencies in the required parking on the site and bolster the municipal supply. Staff are confident that the proposed parking ratios for the site are acceptable. Increasing the maximum distance for additional parking to 500 meters is necessary as it allows for more flexibility to staff when locating additional parking. Also, 500 meters is roughly a 5 to 6 minute walk to the core commercial area, which results in a good level of service. And back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Is the applicant or their agent prepared to present?
They're here and they're coming over to the podium.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair and members of committee and staff and the public. My name is David Folletta, and I am a registered professional planner with Bousfields, and we are the planning consultant to the ownership group, the Rousseau Group. Presentation's online. Thank you.
Yes, just let me know when you need to move forward.
That's helpful. Thank you. I hope everyone can see the presentation before you. In terms of my presentation tonight, I will walk through the site's location, which I hope we're all familiar with, outline a bit of the history of the site, describe the revised proposal, and then outline the requested variances, as well as our analysis on those requested variances. Next slide, please. Thank you. The site, as you see, is on the south side of Winston, east of North Service Road and north of Windward Drive. In terms of some key observations of the site, we know that to the northwest of the subject site, there's a public park. Further north, there is the lake, of course. There's great amenities for the community. Other observations in terms of the surroundings are the Main Street buildings along Winston Road. We know that they're framed with commercial uses at grade. There's limited vehicular access. It's really an area that we want to see pedestrian movement as well as activity in terms of commercial uses. To the west of the site, we see there are a block townhouse development, sort of low rise, but more intense than your traditional sort of suburban developments. To the east of our site, or to the right on the screen, is an approved and under construction development as well, sort of higher density apartment form with ground floor commercial uses. Next slide, please. This is just a view of the site. We know it's the Casablanca Inn. Some observations of the site, as we all know, it's sort of an 8-story building in the center of the site, surrounded by parking and very vehicular driven. So it's not sort of responding to the evolving context of the neighborhood, which we see as a mixed use, intense area that can really evolve into adding more people into a neighborhood that can accommodate and enjoy all of the amenities of the area. Next slide, please. Wanted to highlight some of the history of the site. Many of you may be aware, but this site had gone through an official plan amendment and a rezoning, which established the zoning standards that we're looking to change today. And that approval, it was for 2 buildings similar to the configuration we have today. One was a 12-story building and one was a 19-story building with a central park area. And since that time, It was approved in 2021. The next phase of development is what's called the site plan application process. And through that process, you get into the real detailed design stage where you're looking at the configuration of the building and you're getting ready for a building permit. And it was through that process that we established some what we require, what we deem to be necessary changes to improve the overall development. So we've been working very closely with staff to do a number of things, and you would have seen in our submission some of the changes to the proposal relate to the form of the building and how they relate to the surrounding uses. So ground floor commercial uses, for example, as well as how the buildings are shaped and sculpted to improve the access of sunlight to the Central Park area. Next slide, please. What you see on the screen is the current proposal. So it's a revision to what was previously approved through the official plan amendment and rezoning. And what you see here is the shape of the building. So it's an L-shaped building. So North Service Road is to the left or to the west boundary, and to the bottom or to the south is Windward Drive, and to the top is Winston Road. And what we've tried to do is shape those taller elements to really improve sunlight access to the park. So you'll see the shape of the buildings as well as the Central Park area, which will be a publicly accessible park. In terms of the proposal, I wanted to highlight some key elements. Because of the shaping of the building and the shifting of some of that massing, we have increased the 12-story building to a 15-story building. And then that's the building on the west, which is sort of a hockey shape or an L shape, hockey stick shape or a L-shaped building. And then the building on the right has been shifted and shaped to be a tall building element, which is 25 stories. So that's increased from a 19-story building to a 25-story building. But these are slender, smaller floor plates that provide more sun access to the park. And these are intended to accommodate, in the west or the left building, 50 hotel suites, 250 residential units, as well as ground floor commercial. 607 square meters, which is approximately 6,000 square feet of commercial uses on the ground floor. And then the 25-story building would accommodate 383 residential apartments and 545 square meters of ground floor commercial. Factor 10 is approximately 6,000 square feet of commercial. Next slide, please. We also wanted to highlight for you the ground floor uses. So they've now changed. Originally, they were residential suites on the ground floor. We've changed those through the request of staff. And part of that request was to really animate the commercial, the park frontage. So you're having eyes and activity on that park frontage, as well as providing those commercial uses along the street frontages. So when we talked about an observation of the surrounding context, we know that Winston Road is a really main street type of road with active uses and commercial uses on the ground floor. So we're continuing that pattern on the south side of Winston Road and our building frontages. Next slide, please. This is just a cross-section showing the height of the building. And again, the building on the right is the 25-story building, and the building on the left is the 15-story building. And unlike the application that was previous, we're pretty accurate on the height of these buildings. So next slide, please. In terms of the requested variances, you heard or you would have seen in the notice, as well as the presentation from staff, that the requested variances are 4. So the first one is an increase in height from that 12 stories to the 15. The second one is an increase in height from 19 stories to 25 stories. And then the third one is the minimum parking spaces. So you would have seen when we originally applied, and we'll talk about this in the next slide, it was for a request of a much greater variance, but what we're showing now is a reduction from your parking requirement of 1.25 spaces per unit to 1 space per unit. And this is a slight reduction in our opinion. This is in addition to any visitor parking that would be required for the units, as well as any required parking for the commercial uses, as well as the hotel uses. And then finally, the location of the parking. One of the elements you would have seen in the comments that you received from staff is the ability for us to provide cash in lieu of parking, which means we would have a payment to town staff for any reduction in parking, and staff would take that money and use it to create public parking that could be applied to these lands. So that is the use of cash in lieu of parking. So the town takes it, buys land and builds a parking lot, and then we would utilize that and make sure that it's within a specific distance of this site. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, we originally applied for these variances last year in October, and that was for a reduction from 1 space per unit to 1.25 parking spaces per unit to 0.85. So it was a greater reduction. Staff asked us to hold off on it because they were conducting a parking study of the neighborhood. Based on that study, it provided some additional information and some conclusions. And based on that, we are supportive of increasing our parking ratio to 1 space per unit plus visitor and parking for commercial uses. I'll briefly go through those slides. I see that you've zoomed through them quicker than I would have. But basically what they said is there are, under the Planning Act, in order to rationalize a variance, the Committee of Adjustment can approve it, subject to meeting the tests that were established in the Planning Act. So it's provincial legislation that says so long as you meet those 4 tests, you can vary the bylaw slightly. And in our opinion, it does meet those 4 tests. We've rationalized them in our submissions. We've reviewed staff's analysis of it. They also concur that the proposal meets the 4 tests of the minor variance in the Planning Act, and we're fully supportive of staff's recommendation to approve the variances today. I know that there are people here, and I'd be happy to answer questions of committee as well as any issues that come up from the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the committee first? Dylan?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to get, maybe just provide my comment. I know that there's been a parking study done, and I know that the 1.25 down to 1 seems acceptable. I just, I'm always sort of concerned when I hear that parking is being reduced. It's my understanding that parking has been a challenge in this area. So building such a large development and reducing parking for residents, to me, is a little concerning, because if you have a couple in a building, we don't necessarily know that, they may only have 1 car or 1 vehicle. The GO Transit is supposed to be built nearby, but that has not come to a realization. So I worry about the reality versus sort of the statistical numbers, to be very honest, and worry that this could make parking in the area even worse than it is now. So I guess that's sort of my comments based on looking at the parking study and what's been proposed here. So that's a big worry of mine, especially if that overflow falls into some of those lots by the businesses that are, across the street and adjacent. And if they then need to do something to monitor their parking, we've basically just sort of put that cost and responsibility on them. Regarding the cash in lieu for like an additional parking lot, whether it's the gentleman from Boothfield or staff, is a lot, or is there space within 500 meters that is attainable, or has this already been attained? I mean, I just sort of looking at what's already there, and perhaps that there is land that will become available or can become available. But I guess that's my comment, but now that's my question about this additional parking that could be utilized.
Sorry, can I just say something? I'm so sorry about what happened with the slides. I was trying to access something else and it just moved forward. So if you want me to bring them up, any of them up again, just let me know. Sorry about that.
Not a problem at all. It's probably better that we zoom through them because I don't think it had a ton of content. Maybe I'll start and then I'll pass it over to Harold. In terms of through you, Chair, to the committee member, in terms of your first question, when we originally submitted the application, we had provided a parking study, and that parking study had looked at other similar sites in the neighborhood as well as in the community, in similar communities, and it found that a much lower parking ratio can be rationalized, and similar buildings have lower parking rates of utilization, and that was verified by the parking study that the town had prepared. And in addition, that parking study generally found that the biggest generator of parking aren't the residential apartments in the neighborhood, but it's the amenities that are in the neighborhood. So people are traveling to this neighborhood to utilize and to really take advantage of the great amenities in the neighborhood, as well as the commercial amenities that are there. So that's why, one of the things that staff was pushing for was not a reduction in the commercial parking, but a reduction in the residential parking could be supported. And now I'll pass it over to Harold to speak about the other questions that you had. Thank you.
To you, Mr. Chair, it's Harold Matty here speaking. I just wanted to, again, reiterate the point that was just made. It's an important one because it's a distinction and relatively, when we look at other communities like this, higher density communities, generally, the ratio is about 1 per unit, if not less, across the GTA. So it's a pretty common, it's a common practice. And as was made, the point that was made, and one that we are certainly concerned about, it's the supply that's available for visitors. As this is a destination that we would hope one day would be more walkable and certainly more transit accessible. But in the meantime, it is predominantly an automobile access destination, and so we're seeing the pressures for parking associated not with the current existing residential demands, but rather the visiting automobiles to what is a spectacular main street, one that we continue to hope will improve upon and be enriched, particularly by this development, and that we hope will continue to attract new and more visitors. So it is a big concern for the town to ensure that we have the public parking available, or if you want to call it, one thing that we have to also keep in mind is that this will become a transit-oriented community at one point, so we have to think about flexibility and the ability for us to perhaps think about public parking as a kind of multi-pronged, evolving solution, and one that would have triggers to it when and if certain circumstances or certain demands change, then we can look at different solutions. So we want to keep all options on the table right now. We think that the more important thing with respect to this development is that it's reflective of industry standards, and that the parking generated by the commercial activity is one that certainly has supply for. We're quite comfortable with the standards being lowered, consistent with other areas similar to this and comparable to this in the GTA. And we expect that, in fact, that those demands will continue to drop once the transit is put in place. So we don't want to have an oversupply for the residential. We think that providing something consistent with other places is good, and it will catch up to that once the transit comes in. So we have a number of potential options that we're exploring. They are town-owned properties just on the periphery of this area, and we're also keeping other options on the table, including even that the second phase of this site might still consider other options for parking. It's a two-phased development. We're moving forward right now with this concept, but with keeping the option open for something that would be creative, a little bit untested so far in Grimsby, but for example, we see this in other municipalities where there might be the parking in lieu would be reinvested in in a public parking structure on the site, for example, as an option. So we're looking at our preference is that the parking be as close as possible to where the demand is, but a 5-minute walking distance just from this particular site, but certainly closer to the main street is an option. Like in and around Casablanca, for example, there's a significant amount of boulevard space and other city or town-owned or town-controlled properties that we can consider for parking, and there's also a significant setback or MTO controlled lands that we can also look at for parking, just 1 block to the south. So those are options that we're looking at right now, but still very early in that exploration. But we are quite confident that we'll have a solution, if not a temporary solution, an interim solution, we'll call it, until again we have a more strategic approach to how parking will be dealt with. Taking into consideration potential for transit to move in the near future, hopefully.
Thank you. Adam had his hand up, I believe, unless.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'll just, since we're on the topic of parking, I'll just start off with the parking in lieu. I believe the staff report said there was a $25,000 recommendation per space. I'm wondering how they came up with that figure.
Staff, would you like to respond to that, Harold, or Johara, if you can direct us to some. Oh, Walter, here we go.
Yes, that number was obtained by research that was done by our traffic people in the cost of acquiring the land, and in addition to the cost of building a parking space plus plus a driving lane. So that's the calculation that was made. The acquisition of land plus the construction of a parking space.
What's the date on that, Walter? Like, how old is that number?
I'm sorry, say that again?
What's the effective date of that number? Like, is that from 5 years ago? Or
no, it's fairly current.
Year?
Yeah, it's last year. Last year, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if this were to be deferred, let's say they didn't start construction, like at what time do you trigger the cash in lieu payment? Like, is it inflated, or is there's some protection for the town that it's increasing with the cost of a land and constructing of these types of structures?
Yeah, that's something that we'll build into the site plan agreement.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, that's just because I looked at Niagara on the Lake, and they actually have a parking in lieu bylaw, and they charge $70,000 as of 2024 for a parking spot, cash in lieu. And so my next question actually would be in regards to the application itself. When this first came before us in, I think it was September, originally there was a technical adjustment to the height for the mezzanine. It was only supposed to go up 1 or 2 stories. So I wonder if the agent can comment on the increase of height. I guess it's a total of 9 stories across the 2 buildings now.
I don't know if I pushed the right button. Through you, Chair, to the committee member. Correct. Originally, the original application related to the interpretation of a mezzanine floor. But since that time, as I mentioned earlier, we've been working closely with staff to shift the massing of the building in order to shave components to increase the amount of sunlight that's getting into the park area. And that has all happened since September, and we've seen revisions to the proposal. So overall, the general I'll call it gross floor area has generally been maintained with a slight increase to accommodate for additional ground floor commercial uses. So that is the genesis of the increase in height. So even though it's, for example, the 19-story building went to 25, that was on a smaller floor plate with a slightly increased gross floor area. And if I could pass it over to Harold to finish up.
This was initiated by the staff, to be honest, and it had to do with a grave concern about ensuring the success of the public space here, and that there were two very important aspects that we felt were important to the success. One was that it was going to be animated and utilized in day and night and through all seasons, and so having continuous retail was absolutely vital. It was also, having the retail there was vital to this, if this was going to be an anchor to the main street and one that would be consistent with what the main street's purpose and function was. It needed to be, something like the main street or better. And having a public space that's being proposed here would be an event space, and it should be one that should be like I said, an anchor. It would be a destination within the main street. And so we felt absolutely critical to that was going to be the retail. Second would be the degree of comfort and appeal of the space itself. And when we looked at the shadow studies, the council approved concept, in fact, had very little sun penetration through that space because of the orientation of those buildings and the separation between them during the shoulder seasons, March to September. So the summer months weren't too bad, but we're hoping that, of course, that we want to extend the utilization of that open space as much as possible as the months get colder. And March and September are good dates to look at for the degree of sunlight in the space. It was almost non-existent. And so we saw an opportunity, and we encouraged the applicant to consider this through a kind of shifting of the massing, opening up and enhancing, expanding the separation distance. And also, in doing so, it would, the slab building, although taller, is oriented in such a way that the shadow is actually narrower, and while the shadows do extend further, the taller building is the more slender one, the more point tower one, has a shadow that moves quite quickly across the site, but it doesn't actually have any implications that extend out to other open spaces or other important amenity areas of the community. So we were careful to ensure that wouldn't happen. So when at the end of the day, we had to weigh the pros and cons. If we keep it as is, and we would have, of course, have a space that would be in shadow during the shoulder seasons, or if we considered narrowing the massing but allowing for additional height, without further implications in terms of shadow, but opening up the space to sunlight, it seemed the better option for us. And that's why we encouraged the applicant to do it.
Okay, thank you. Also, just to confirm my numbers, is this plan also adding 66 more units over the previous?
Through you, Chair, to the committee member, I don't have that information before me at the moment. I will say that the types of units have changed because the shape of the building changes. So there might be more one-bedroom units versus two-bedroom units, which would identify the actual increase from the original approval. But again, the variances before the committee today aren't specifically related to density. They're only insofar as the parking rate would apply.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, because the number I had was 567 on the original, and based on the plans, it was 633. Also, for the original plan, there was to go from there was an increase in density, I think, from 3 times lot area to 4.98, and also on the westerly building, it was 12 to 19. There was a Section 37 agreement. Is that correct?
Through you, Chair, to the committee member, that Section 37 agreement was it no longer applies given the changes to the Planning Act. I'll actually pass it over. I wasn't involved in the official plan amendment and rezoning, so I'll pass it over to Walter, who can better answer that question.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Chair. To Member Mottershead, the Section 37 provision is in the original bylaw that was passed for the site, and is still applicable. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just one consideration I would think, because I did look at the Planning Act, and actually some development in Toronto was similar, same kind of thing, where they made changes after the agreement to height, where after the agreement was signed, and council actually had to go back and I guess amend the agreement with the developer because of the actual increased height or density. So would that, to staff, is that still applicable to this? I'm just not sure of the changes in the Planning Act recently, but
in this particular case, it was primarily the gross floor index. So the gross floor index is approximately the same as the zoning approved plan.
okay, thanks.
Any further questions, Adam?
Actually, I'm going to hit up on, I guess, the parking, 500 meters. I find that kind of excessive. I mean, yeah, Grimsby on the Lake is a little bit of a built-up area, but when I actually went into Google Earth and mapped out what a 500-meter radius would be, it was as far north into the lake, it was as far east as Casablanca, as far south as the Welcome Center, as far east as far west as the LJM building. So, yeah, I'm finding that number a little troublesome for me.
Do they have a site in mind that they have a very specific measurement? For 388, was there a specific site that their property that was in mind to replace the parking?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair. Yes, we have very specific sites in mind that are under our control, specifically to the east of the site, and there are other sites that we're contemplating. And again, it's not specifically for the benefit of this site. It's also for the benefit of the entire area. The parking study emphasized that what's important is to provide again, parking for visitors to the site for the commercial uses, and that's in the long run, not necessarily in the short run. There's identified a supply that's sufficient to the year 2041 based on our parking study that was done, and that the town should consider looking at providing additional visitor parking, public parking, for this downtown area in general, as we have done for the historic downtown of Grimsby, where municipal parking is available for the businesses in the area.
Thank you. Adam?
That's it for me. Thanks,
sorry.
Cameron.
I was just going to add through you, Chair, to the committee member. In my experience, a 500-meter radius for off-site parking is pretty consistent and applied for in other municipalities, including the City of Hamilton's downtown, as well as I believe the City of Burlington's downtown. I know for sure it's in the City of Hamilton. So 500 meters is generally that 5 to 6 minute walking distance.
Thank you.
Sorry. I just needed to add something else. There was mention of parking concerns in the neighborhood that exist. Those parking concerns weren't necessarily with respect to the availability or the number of parking spaces that were available for all of the users in the neighborhood. It was essentially disputes over how those spaces are used and who's allowed to use those spaces. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear, and that's something that we're hoping to resolve with the condominium corporations, the existing condominium corporations in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. So do we have a rough aggregate here? Is it about 100 spaces that are being requested, and that would be that's the number that would be used as a condition to pay cash in lieu at the rate, at the 25,000 or whatever the new rate is at the time, if this happens, let's say 5 years from now? So is it roughly 100 spaces, Walter? Am I correct in that?
What the application enables is the option of paying cash in lieu to the municipality for the provision of parking. It doesn't specifically identify how many parking spaces would be paid in cash in lieu.
But is the reduction assuming that the payment is for all those spaces that were given approval for being reduced? Like, in other words, is that the formula, or are you just going to pull another number like?
No. The reduction request isn't to reduce the number from 1.25 to 1 and to make up that difference in cash in lieu. The request is to reduce the required parking from 1.25 per unit to 1 per unit, and town staff are supportive of that because that is essentially the going rate in the neighborhood. That's a reasonable requirement for this neighborhood. The cash in lieu would be an option for the applicant to, if they cannot provide some parking on the site, then they would have the option, and subject to town's approval, obviously, they would have the option of paying the town cash to provide those parking spaces in the area that they cannot provide on site.
Okay. Any further questions?
Fabia and
Fabia?
Through the chair, thank you. I have a question regarding the shadow study. It has been stated that you studied the effect of the shadow on the park, but I'm wondering if there's been any negative feedback from the townhouses across the street, if anything was looked at regarding the townhouses.
Through you, Chair, to the councilor, or sorry, to the committee member. Absolutely. We, as Harold mentioned, as well as it's captured in the staff report, we did look at built form and shadow impacts on the surrounding residential neighborhoods, and there aren't any negative impacts to those townhouses. There is some early morning shadows that do bleed onto the townhouses, but they don't hit the amenity areas throughout the day.
Okay, thank you.
Did somebody else have a question? Was it Dan?
Dan, yeah.
Yeah, through you, Chair. I just want some clarification, if I can, on where, if we can provide that, where the parking would be. You said to the east, there could be, well, Walter said to the east there could be some parking. I'm just curious where that lot would be located, if we know that. And secondly, if as I understand, the $25,000 per spot, is that just a license to reduce parking? And we don't have control over that? Or is there a cap on that as to how much they can reduce given that amount?
This is a provision that we have in the downtown core right now. And we have utilized that provision in our official plan and our zoning bylaw to provide public parking in and around the main street in the downtown core, in the old downtown core. We want to ensure that this option is available to the town for this specific area, and this would be a revenue source for the municipality to provide public parking, not parking that's specifically devoted to a specific use, but we find it's more efficient to provide parking for the public, for the general public, to utilize in a more efficient way. So again, we're not saying that this will be done. This just enables this option to be available to the town. And again, it's subject to town council approval. This option has to be, we feel it needs to be available to the town and to the developer to provide public parking, which the parking study has identified a need for in this area.
Through you, Chair, to the councillor, if I could just add one additional comment. This was not a variance that we had requested. This was a variance that staff had identified to give us the flexibility, should there be an opportunity, to share resources and create a public parking facility. So we are fully supportive of it. We think it's a great idea to provide that public parking for the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Any further questions? So essentially, staff, you're requesting that this variance is essentially to not necessarily change the GFA, although it might change the unit count. The gross floor area, the buildable area, is essentially about the same. The building will be taller but slimmer. The public park will be enhanced because of it. The parking reduction sounds like it's in line with others, but it's not necessarily that's not the number you're necessarily using for the cash in lieu. That's that just gives you the flexibility to provide that or trigger that option if you want to, from what I'm hearing. But so it was a staff recommended variance, this whole process. To summarize.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And if there be no further questions from the committee, is there anyone in the audience or the public that would like to speak to this matter?
Yes, they will come up one by one.
Okay. Yep.
Kevin Blanchard, 385 Winston Road, Unit 905. I live in the Odyssey building. I don't need a study. I look out the window every day and I can see the parking problem. I don't know when these guys do these studies, Monday to Friday. You come on a Saturday and Sunday, that place is slammed with parking problems. But nobody sees that. Okay, that's one problem. Problem number two, that is a very, very tight geographical area. It's already built. And now you're putting more on that area? And this magical parking lot is going to go somewhere? I'll tell you where. Lake Ontario. That's where the parking lot's going to go. So get ready for that amendment. This is nuts. What they're doing is they're saying 1 is the magical number. Why? Because Toronto said 1, and Mississauga said 1, and Halton says 1. So what does Grimsby do? Yep, let's get in line and grab number 1. Has anybody said, is that number realistic? No, it ain't. It just ain't. But nobody's questioning the number. They just blindly rubber stamp it. Let's get on with the next issue of business. So you have a choice today whether to say, is the number correct? Is the viability of producing an actual parking lot in that area feasible, doable? Not tomorrow, not next month, not 2 years, in the next 10 years, 20 years, when you guys aren't even on this committee anymore. Are you going to look back and say, yeah, we did the right thing? Or no, we just blindly rubber stamped it, went ahead with a number that we didn't really have faith in, but we ignored all the reality. So that's the thing that we're trying to deal with today. I want to have as many people come to this area. It's a great area, but it's already at a breaking point, and we're not even fully developed. And now you're going to add 2 more condos, a 10-story condo across the street. LJM, I have no idea what they're doing. And then you have the other developments going in on the other side of Casablanca. So we're already reaching the bursting point. We have 0 public transportation in this area. Let's face the facts, folks. We live in cars here. And to say that every family's going to get 1? Come on, it's not reality. Please face the facts. Understand what you're really dealing with. Not a study that says, oh, here's a standard, we're going to adopt that standard. Question the standard. Please. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes.
Zahara?
Yeah, next. Did you want to say something, ma'am?
Yeah, sure, why not? Hi, my name is Barb Blatherwick, and I live at number 12 Walters Lane. I'm in one of the 2-bedroom condos just on the inner portion off of Winston. talking about the parking, this is a bedroom community. As Kevin has said, we don't have any public transit. We don't have any businesses here to employ the people that live here. Everybody's on the highway going back and forth, which means husbands and wives are going in different directions in different cars. A one parking lot per household is not sufficient. We have visitor parking that's set up in our units, where our units are, and already the visitor parking are being sold to other people because they have 2 cars per family and they have nowhere to park them. And this is what's going to happen with these apartments. We just got through a whole discussion about fence heights and how people were variances on fence heights, and yet we're allowing buildings to go from 12 to 15 and go up to 25, and yet they're going to cut back on parking? Like, it makes no sense. These bigger buildings are going to bring more people into the area, and we've got to provide parking for them because we don't have anything else to offer them. So I really hope that you guys sit back and look and make sure that there's enough parking for all these families that are moving in, because so far, nobody is stepping up and doing the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else, Dahara?
Anyone else in the audience who wants to speak to 4 Windward? There's just some discussions, so I'm waiting to hear. Anyone? Okay. Anyone online who wants to speak to this application? Okay, back to you, Mr. Chair.
No? Okay. Any further questions from the committee? Or response? If not, then do I have a motion on the application before us? Anyone?
Mr. Chair,
Yep.
I can make the motion, but the one, and please tell me how I would go about this, but the one provision of the reduced parking of the 1.25 to 1 that's in the motion, I can't support. The other 3, I'm willing to support, but not that one. So can I make the motion reading those 3 statements and not the 4?
Sure.
Is that,
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's sort of, I guess, deletion by omission of me saying it, but I just wasn't sure the best way to sort of put that forward is, should I proceed? Is that the best way forward?
We can break it up.
That's what I would, I mean, at least to provide some more conversation or for us to potentially vote on it. So should I go ahead and read that then?
Go ahead.
Okay. So be it resolved that minor variance application A20-23 for 4 Windward Drive to permit a maximum building height of 45 meters, 15 stories for the west building, whereas a height of 44 meters, 12 stories is permitted per section 7.2.1, table 11 and schedule 77 of zoning bylaw 1445 as amended, to permit a maximum height of 87 meters, 25 stories for the east building, whereas a height of 69 meters, 19 stories is permitted as per section 7.2.1, table 11 and schedule 77 of zoning bylaw 1445 as amended, to permit required parking spaces for commercial uses on another lot located to a maximum of 500 meters from the subject lot, mixed use high density zone MHD, whereas required parking for commercial uses in the downtown zones may be provided on another lot, provided such lot is located no more than 122 meters from the subject lot and the commercial use as per section 5.8 of the zoning bylaw 1445 as amended be approved because it meets the 4 tests.
Okay, a seconder on that motion as amended without the reduction of the parking spaces. I can't see beside the Dilhara there.
No, there isn't anyone here.
Adam? Well, I'll approve that, or I'll make the seconder just to get it on the floor then. So I'll second that motion. So then the motion is to approve the variances with the exception of the parking reduction from 1.25 to 1. Is that correct, Dylan? Am I reading that correct? Okay. Any further discussion on that motion? All those in favor say aye or raise their hand. Can't see, sorry. What have we got there? 1, 2, 3. Opposed, if any? Was carried. So the motion for the all the variances with the exception of the parking reduction has been approved. Was there any conditions attached? There were some conditions that went along with that. Dylan? I guess I should have read those first. Sorry, I apologize.
Sorry, I didn't see that in the, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, the resolution for 4 Windward, I only have as one page. I apologize.
Yeah, so unless you made any conditions while you were...
There are none?
There are none,
from
yeah.
staff?
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, so we read that correctly, Dylan.
Sorry, can I just confirm, Mr. Chair, what was the vote count on that? There was 2 in favor
3-2.
and 3 against?
Three in favor.
Oh,
and 2
3 in favor.
opposed.
I apologize. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So it was carried. Now, I guess by not dealing with that last one, did you want to make a motion specifically on that or just leave it? Or what's the committee's pleasure on that last one? That component.
Mr. Chair, I'm assuming then that it just remains at 1.25, correct?
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm good with leaving it as is.
Okay. Thank you. That's it. There is a 20-day appeal period before it becomes final and binding. Okay, the next and last application this evening then is for application A2523 143 Lake Street, unit number 3. Dilhara?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Oh, I have no idea. Can you ask Walter? Just a minute. We're going to wait for the room to clear, Mr. Chair. Walter? Okay, so the purpose of this application is to construct a new 2-story single detached dwelling. The variance requested is to permit a maximum building depth of 25.1 meters, whereas a maximum of 20 meters is permitted. This is an image of the site plan, which was circulated with the notice of hearing. This is an image of the neighborhood for context. This is an image of the current conditions of the site. This is what's proposed as provided by the applicant. And correspondence has been received by these agencies, and I will summarize that for you now. Planning staff have no objections. The variances are considered minor in nature and meet the 4 tests. Public Works has no comments and 1 condition. That is, town staff will require lot grading and drainage plan demonstrating that stormwater runoff will not negatively impact nor rely upon neighboring properties. NPCA has the following comments. NPCA notes that the entire house is landward of the erosion hazard. The deck is within the erosion hazard. Per policy 4.2.6.1, decks are allowed in the erosion allowance. Additionally, the NPCA offers the following comments. NPCA has no objection to the concluded 2-to-1 stable slope allowance. NPCA has no objection to the concluded 10-meter erosion allowance. NPCA has no objection to the conclusion that no further setback is required. As such, the NPCA has no objection to the proposed minor variance to permit a maximum building depth of 26.06 meters, whereas a maximum of 20 meters is permitted. A work permit will be required from the NPCA for the proposed dwelling. The region has the following comments. Waste collection. Regional staff advise that an indemnity agreement is required in order to enter the private road for waste collection. The owner can use there's a link that they gave to complete the agreement. And with regards to the natural environment system, the subject property is impacted by the region's natural environment system, as it is located along the Lake Ontario shoreline and is adjacent to a permanent or intermittent watercourse. The shoreline in this area is hardened by riprap. Niagara Official Plan Policy 3.1.10.4 states that where redevelopment of an existing lot is proposed, a vegetated shoreline should be achieved to the extent feasible. Considering the hardened nature of the shoreline, revegetation is not possible. With regards to the watercourse, an EIS is required when development or site alteration is proposed within 30 meters of this feature. However, NOP Policy 3.1.9.7.2 states that EIS requirements can be scoped if the proposed development is minor and is not anticipated to have a negative impact on the NES. Staff are satisfied that the impact of the proposed development will be minor and not have a negative impact on the NES, provided that erosion and sediment control measures are installed prior to construction and maintained during construction. And Grimsby Fire, Grimsby Power, and the Ministry of Transportation have no comments. And yeah, back to you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the owner of the applicant here? Or the representative of the owner?
They're at the podium, yes.
Okay.
Can we start?
Yes, you can say something.
Hi, everyone. This is the owner, Des, and I'm the designer, home designer for the property. Designs by Santi, and we created this proposal for the property. And I just want to talk briefly about the site plan because it's getting late. Is there possible to re-show the slide of the site plan? Is it possible?
Yes, sure. I'll get it up for you.
Is it possible to flip it? Oh, sorry, the previous page. Turn it right? No?
No, not with this slide, sorry.
Left, okay. So the left side is the lake, and the right side is a private road that accesses Lake Street. As you can see, the site is not rectangular, so the house is almost reflective of the shape of the lot. It's almost like the west side is sticking out towards the south, and the north side is where most of the massing occurs. So basically, our house design imitates the lot shape because it's very irregular. And there's some restrictions on this property that dictates kind of how it's shaped. On the left side, sorry, not left side, west side is a hill, essentially. The bottom, okay, bottom. On the bottom is essentially a hill adjacent to the property. And the house that is referred to in the document that is 28 meters is to the bottom of the lot. Okay, so they have already exceed the existing 20 meters by 8 meters. And what we are requesting is a variance of 5 meters from the 20 meters for 25.1 meters. Okay, and then to the lake side, there's two things that kind of set the line. One is the slope stability study, and we had SOAMAT do the study, and it's in a safe location and in a stable slope location. There's an existing retaining wall that it's already built up. That's due to and that's the reason the vegetation can't be there, because the retaining wall is at that location. Where the edge of the back porch is on the house is essentially the limit for the condo where we can build. And we had to defer the project to this month to deal with some of the condo issues that were brought up, and we've hopefully obtained everything to achieve that conformance. So that was the line that the condo corp brought up to us, and we've adjusted our plan a bit from the 26 meters earlier to the 25 meters that is currently shown. Okay, so we reduced the house depth by 1 meter to accommodate that. And then there's a rear porch which does not come into a building depth that we've reduced also to get it within that line. Okay. On the top side, we've set the house back about 3.8 meters to give us some distance from that property line. And it's and last point is there is a bit of fall on the left, on the bottom side. So to accommodate, this was probably the best location for the garage to face the hill. So the rest of the house opened up to the lake. Do you want to say anything, Des?
No, I think.
Okay, those are my brief comments on the site and why we came up with a 25-meter depth house.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Dylan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We may need to keep that drawing up.
Sorry.
I apologize. I should have started off with that. There was comments in some of the correspondence that I saw, and just to be clear, can you kind of describe where the driveway is and where the front door is? There seems to be a concern about the front door, and I'm just trying to make sure I've got the I'm understanding the location.
Okay, the driveway is, sorry, the garage is on the bottom. I don't know how to point at anything. I don't know if it helps.
It's that extension. It's that extension.
If you can read the word driveway on the plan, I don't know if it's in front of you, from the bottom of the garage.
Okay, I'll look. Yes, sorry. Yes.
Yeah, and then it follows and it connects into the existing condo driveway towards the top.
Yeah. Okay. And where is the front door then in relation to the garage? Is it right beside it?
No, in this instance, it's on the top side where the word walkway is.
Okay, I'll have to look. Okay, I'll look at my other document that would have that. So just in general, the front door is facing.
Kind of like the ravine, east, top side, if you're looking on the site plan.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions from the committee? Adam?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, just to the applicant, I wonder if I've had a chance to read any of the correspondence from, I guess, members of the immediate neighborhood in regards to their concerns over the condo corporation.
Do you want to talk about how you met them?
Oh, sure.
Dealt with the situation?
So I think, there were a few items that were brought up about from the condo corporation. And so I had met with them on February 5th and went through all of those. So there were a few questions. The major one was related to the part 7, which is on the left side of this picture, which was and that's a reason why we reduced it from 28 meters to 25 meters, including the porch. So that's how we reduced that. And then the other question was related to why the whole house is shifted towards the bottom part, which is the west side. And that is because we had met with our neighbors in Unit 2. And then, so at one point, they had raised the thing that they don't want the house to be too close to them. So though it is 1.8 meters is what I think the town allows. So we have left about a 3.8 meters so that there is enough room and privacy for them, right? So that's like a ravine. It's a slope. There's no house there, but that belongs to Unit 2, right? So those are things that we explained and in our meeting on February 5th.
I just want to also comment. The planning department also mentioned that the condo corp doesn't really affect this variance application, but we took it into account regardless.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Adam, Dylan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to be clear, though, have you seen the correspondence that the committee has received that was dated February the 16th?
I think we'll have some questions, and then perhaps the members of the public can speak. I don't know if those recent emails or letters are provided to the applicants. That's a question maybe for Dilhar, if they would see it. Because what Dylan's alluding to is recently we've gotten a couple of emails and or letters from people, and they'll be given opportunity to speak, and you may wish to respond to those. I just don't know if you had those in advance of this meeting.
No.
No. Oh, you're talking to us or committee? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, to the applicant. And their agent.
No, we haven't.
Okay. So yeah, one of the questions raised was the condo corp's restrictions versus what the committee is dealing with. We're only dealing with the town's approval for setback and building depth and so on. We don't deal with the approval, obviously, that you have to go through your condo corp or your land condo to deal with their issues that they've raised in the restrictive covenants that the condo may or may not have. A question for you related to that, though, is there was some circulation on recently about a building envelope that the condo corp has in addition to, I guess it overlays the town's setback requirements. Dilhara, maybe it's an opportunity to provide that map. Is there a way to get that condo corp building envelope shown? Because my question is to the applicant and his agent, do you meet all the condo corp building envelope for Unit 3? I know it's not really our purview, but I'm just questioning. Do you meet all those setbacks?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a line that says Part 7 on the site plan, and we've made adjustments to be behind that line throughout.
Okay.
Basically.
I know we're not dealing with it, but I just had a question if you did meet that building envelope for shown as Unit 3 in the condo restrictive covenant. And then we're dealing with what's in front of us is the request for the building depth.
Yes, so this drawing reflects the change to stay behind that line and the current application for 25 meters.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee first before we open it up to the public?
Through the chair, I have a question. It's Fabia.
Yeah, Fabia.
This is for the designer. I'm just curious on here. I don't see the trees that are running along the left side of the lot. What will be happening to them?
Yeah, yeah, sure. So as I said, right, so we talked about that with the condo corporation as well when we met with them on February 5th. So the reason why that trees are going to be affected, some of the trees are going to be affected, is because we are moving it away from Unit 2, right? So if we move it back to 1.8 meters on the Unit 2 side, then those trees will not be affected, right? So that's we explained that to them as well, because it is in deference of their wishes that we pushed it out on this side. For us, it doesn't matter whether we are closer to them, as long as we meet the town's requirements, we are good.
So when you say affected, do you mean?
We may have to remove a few trees there, yes.
Thanks. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Fabia. Anybody else in the committee? If not, then Delhara, can you maybe go through the list of the public that would like to speak? If we could get your name and address for the record, whoever's going first.
Susan, would you like to go first?
Hi there. I wanted to perhaps ask that, sorry.
Sorry, can you get your name and address for the record first? Sorry, Susan.
Sure. It's Susan Corcoran. We are at 149 Lake Street. I'm not sure why there we go. 149 Lake Street, Unit 2. And, you know, I think because Heidi, who's under the name of Gary here, who is the president of the condo board, it might be best to have her start and speak to the conversation that was held with the owners and then come back to us. Is that possible?
Yeah, sounds good.
Sure.
Gary and Heidi, do you want to go first?
Hi, good evening. It's Heidi Evans here. I'm at 143 Lake Street, Unit 4, and I am president of the Niagara North Condo Corporation and owner of Unit 4. So to discuss our meeting that we had February 5th with the applicant, we did discuss Part 7, moving the house because he could not build in Part 7, and that was moved. During that same meeting, the numbers came up for the reducing the application. The original application was for 26 meters, and at that time, the applicant advised that the actual building was going to be 28.1 meters, reducing it to 25 meters. So we're questioning the actual square footage or the meters that they are requesting at this time. There is a discrepancy in the original submission and now this submission. If it was originally 26, reducing it should have been down to 23, but it's now 25.1. Second, we did talk about the trees on the west side of the property, which actually are adjacent to Unit 4, my property. The slope that you're referring to is actually, our house is higher and in elevation than Unit 3. So the slope actually supports our foundation. And there's 16 walnut trees there and 1 sycamore tree there. To move that house closer to Unit 4, west side, would mean removing at least 6 to 8 mature maple trees, could affect our foundation on our side of the property. Moving the house away from Unit 2, the reason being is that their main entrance, is now facing Unit 2 currently on the east side, and that entrance will look onto Unit 2's property, and the privacy is an issue for Unit 2, so that was also discussed. So moving the house west closer to Unit 4, it doesn't solve the issue for Unit 2, and it could mean issues for Unit 4 at this time, with a house being submitted for this size. And then to discuss the common elements of the condo committee, all homes on this property, and our condo are only 5. First house is 50 years old. Second house, Unit 2, is 100 years old. Unit 4 and Unit 5 are 20 years old. So we all have front doors facing onto the street. The proposed house for Unit 3 does not have a door facing the street south. It has a door facing east only. So they're saying they have to move the house back as Unit 2 has requested it, but they're doing it because their front door, their main entrance, I should say, is on the east side. So that does not conform to our common elements of the condo corporation, and that is step 1. Yes, there are further steps under the condo corporation for approval for building, the construction of the building and the aesthetics of it, but that's a secondary step. But this is what we're addressing today, is the common elements and the size that they're putting in, and 25 meters is not feasible for that size of lot. There will be a lot of destruction of trees, And it's just not feasible at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
May I comment back, or I have to wait?
Yeah, go, yeah. No, actually, we're going to go through the list first.
Okay.
Don't mind, and then you can summarize all of them.
Okay.
But just to be clear, yes, we're only dealing with the depth of the building. We're not dealing with the condo restrictions or their other controls that they may or may not have on the property. This committee is only dealing with the one requested variance, which is the depth of the building. Go ahead, Susan.
Yes, thank you very much. Susan Corcoran, 149 Lake Street. We are Unit 2, adjacent to the property on the east. Certainly when we purchased the house back in 2021, we were aware that they were going to build a house there, and obviously we're looking forward to having new neighbors. We have some concerns regarding the measurement of the property. First of all, the backyards, is it set back from the property line? Is the backyard set back from the property line, or is it from the top of the retaining wall? Because the retaining wall is new and added, I don't know, at least 15 feet to the depth of the property because of the way that the retaining wall was constructed.
We're going to have them address that question at the very end.
Okay, and then I think this was addressed, is the porch included in the measurements? Like, is that part of the building envelope? And also, there's a lot of back and forth about the 28, 26, 25 meters. In the agenda specifically for this evening, on page 75, it says 26.06 meters. And then on pages 80 and 91, it says 25.1 meters. And we just want to make sure that we're all speaking about the same numbers, not the 26, which we've heard from both Des and from Heidi was originally 28 meters, not the 26 originally proposed.
Yes, I can address that. Sorry, can I speak?
Staff is going to interrupt you. Sorry, Susan. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the reason for that discrepancy is because the NPCA originally provided comments back when this application was originally on the agenda, and they didn't revise their comments. Like the comments remained the same because they didn't have any further comment. So because the attachment was from that time is why that number remains the 26. But yeah, so that I want to clarify that that's the reason. But it's 25 that is on the table right now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
The other thing is we don't really have any kind of visual understanding of the differences between what the house was proposed in November and what's being proposed in February in terms of really just what the changes were. And when you spoke about, Mr. Speaker, when you spoke about the overlay, all of those things would certainly be helpful from a visual perspective in understanding the impact, because as Heidi mentioned, her house is up here, then is their house, and ours is below, right? So we have this graded hill that goes between the three properties that, which has been addressed already, impacts water runoff, and sunlight in particular. The front door facing east is obviously a concern for us because the fact that our house is situated a little bit further back, and that when it was looking at complying to the area, I mean, I guess the question is, how is a house positioned sideways on a lot considered conforming? I mean, are there a lot of other houses in Grimsby that are turned sideways on a lot with their front door facing a neighbor's front yard?
We're saving the question for the end.
Sorry. We're going to keep going. Okay. And basically, the ravine is part of our front yard, which they're talking about but the creek in that yard is, they'd be looking directly into our house. So that means that there are 2 garage doors, their garage entrance door and their front door all face into our home, like into our yard. I want to clarify that we actually never spoke with the owners of the property regarding what they're decided to design. We had a email communication with them back in April when we had met with them just briefly at one of the condo meetings, and they said that they were going to put their front door facing east, which is into our backyard, and we expressed our concern, and then they sent an email back saying, no, they weren't going to do that, and here we are today back at square one, which is their front door facing east. Some of the other concerns that we have is the impact, of course, of the trees on our property that will be impacted by them being so close to our property. We have mature black walnut trees that are fairly close to the property line. And of course, with the height of their home and also where they're proposing to start digging, is that it'll destroy the majority of that root system and impact our trees. And that the garage that they're proposing will impact the sunlight that we receive on our property and cast us in shade. And, you know, through the condo corporation, we were expecting a study, but I'm not sure how the town is looking at the impact of sunlight and shade on somebody else's property during this time. And that when we purchased the property, it's about 3 years ago now, we all had an opportunity to look at the condo corp, and that it was, and the town of Grimsby specifically mentioned in this agreement that it would be a maximum of a 20-meter envelope. So again, knowing that there was a house going to be built there, we purchased the house knowing that that building was not going to exceed 20 meters. And now they're asking for a variance of 5 meters, which we feel negatively impacts the value of our property, our enjoyment, our privacy for sure, based on how the house is being situated. And yeah, we think that the excess 5 meters is not reasonable, and we oppose it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Jill Hara, you're going to have to go through the list for me if you can.
Yeah, sure. Ellen? Ellen, are you there? Did you want to say something?
Ellen?
Gary has his hand up. You can go ahead.
Gary?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for allowing us to speak and voice our opinions this evening. I just wanted to reiterate what Susan has said around the opportunity when we moved into this building 13 years ago as well. We had the opportunity to look at the lot that was available also. And at that point in time, we all understood the 20-meter depth of the lot. And certainly these owners are aware that when they purchase unit number 3 as well, that the maximum depth of that lot where a house could be built was 20 meters. I think asking for 25% increase on the lot size, in our opinion, is excessive. We think it's important to maintain the 20-meter depth footprint of that lot to maintain our privacy as well as the environmental success that we've had in this neighborhood as well. As Susan has mentioned, and Heidi has mentioned, we have 16 walnut trees and a very old sycamore tree between our homes as well. We're very fortunate on a regular basis to see a pair of bald eagles, a pair of beavers that come up from the lakefront as well as from the creek. coyotes, foxes, and we actually have wild turkeys that inhabit the area also. We're very lucky to be able to have these animals back here, and certainly exceeding the 20-meter depth lot would impact that environmental success that we've had in the area also. Obviously, Heidi and I oppose the application also, and just want to thank you for allowing us to speak this evening.
Thank you. Anyone else? Robin, I'm going to guess, got a hand up?
Yes, we're not part of the condo corporation. We're just kind of neighbors in the area.
Mr. Chair, name and...
Can we get your name and address, though?
Mike Michalski, Michalski, 141 Lake Street.
Go ahead.
I just, with the site plan and whatnot, if I could just, or it could just be clarified, which part of the new dwelling will be facing south? Because, you know, we've talked about the entrance being to the east and whatnot. Which profile will actually be facing south, the street view, which we would look upon?
Can we pull up the profile plans, the elevation plans of the proposed drawings? I did see them in the package. Dilhara, is that possible?
Yeah, just give me a minute.
Thank you.
Is this the property line?
I'm not sure. Looks like these would all go.
Yeah.
These we have no control over.
I think all of them will go. Because this is only...
Okay, I see that. It says south front. Now, and then the main entrance will be over to on the east side. And the garage, does it face south or does it face another direction?
East.
It faces east. So this is the street profile as you're showing me there is the south side. Thank you.
So it would be similar to number 4, I take it. Number 4 is an L-shaped building with the garage doors facing east as well.
Okay.
Does that help, Robin?
Yeah, that's fine. Also, you know, just in terms of not adding too much more to the comments, but kind of we have a concern about preserving as much of the many trees as possible as well, just from an aesthetic and kind of our kind of view from where we are. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I believe is it Dan?
Yes, hi. Thank you. Thank you again, guys. I know it's late in the evening and I don't want to keep everybody here. I guess just, you know, Susan and I own a lot of property that are in other municipalities, and we've had to, you know, take care of things being built. So we're very aware of that. We're just concerned that this new build is superseding everything else in the value of our own home. And so it's kind of setting a precedent that you can kind of put a house sideways on a lot, and that it will, if it does impact the home that's next door, that we're only talking about, as you said, a 5-meter variance, which isn't what we're really talking about this evening. So I appreciate that you're looking at a variance, and that is what you're here as a committee, and that. But I do feel that we need to defer this just to truly understand that this home doesn't comply and meet that standard that you have in your compliance, that it meets with the neighborhood and the surrounding area. So again, the drawing, when we looked at it, it looked like the house was fronting on the south side. But when you dig deeper into the drawing, you realize that the whole house is situated facing east into our front lawn.
Thank you. Any other comments for people wishing to speak? No? then I'll have the applicant or their agent respond to some of the points and questions that were raised. Dilhara or maybe the planning staff can comment about the orientation of the house. Is there a requirement to have the front doors face the street?
Sure, Mr. Chair. Did you want us to go first or the applicant to go first?
We'll go with the applicant first.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if there's a item regarding the door facing the front street, but it is a condo parcel also. One thing about having the door on that side, they were concerned about privacy, but this probably increases their privacy because you're not standing at the front door all day. If it was a family room, great room, you'd be there more, actually, than a front door. So in terms of privacy, it actually increases personal privacy because of that location. Otherwise, we could have a great room on that side, and you'd be looking in that side all day. So in terms of privacy, I don't know if that's an issue. As to having the hill on the left side and the right side, it seems like we're squishing the house skinnier. So almost they want us to make it longer, which is counter to what this application is to get to 25 meters. So that's my comment.
Thank you. Does the owner wish to speak or add anything?
Yeah, no, I think, one of the things is that I know there is a bit of that land has been empty for a long time, right? So, and I think there have been applications earlier which have been approved as well, so which I think, but for some reason it was never built, right? So we have actually mimicked one of those ones. And as we said, I think our neighbor, like for example, Unit 4, and it is there in your documents as well, is 28 meters in depth. And so it is not like, and it is actually the shape of our house mimics Unit 4. The garage is on the same side, except for the front door. And one of the reasons why we are not putting the front door, because it is completely facing the road, right? So like if there is a crash, if somebody comes in very fast, they will just come into that, into our house, right? So that's why we want to have it at the front door. Now, if you look at the plan of Unit 2, Unit 2 is away from our house, right? So it's not facing the house of the Unit 2. It is facing the backyard. You can call it front yard, side yard, whatever way you call it, towards the lake. It faces that narrow length of land that they have. It is facing that land, right? And there are cedar trees there, right? So there are cedar trees that have been planted there as well. So it is not really like, I don't think there's any privacy. And as Susan mentioned, their land is on a lower level. But that's how that whole area is, right? So ours is lower than Unit 4, and probably Unit 4 is lower than Unit 5, right? So it is a sloping land, and it slopes into Unit 2. So there's always going to be, anytime there is some construction going to happen, there's always going to be, that slope is going to be there, right? So that's the only reason that we put our door on the side. If you look at the plan, if you want, you can go back. When you look from the south side, like when you look from the door, it looks like the house is facing the front. And we have not put any bay windows or any of those windows again on the Unit 2 side. Again, it was an email exchange. We explained that to Susan and Dan as well, to kind of make sure that, okay, we have not put that so that we don't want your property value to be affected, as they had a concern about it.
Thank you. Now, being past 10 o'clock, we should make a motion that we continue this meeting past 10 o'clock. I know I missed that by a few minutes. Is that okay? Committee? Still moved. Adam, seconder? Dylan? Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, if any. Is carried. Sorry about that little issue we had to deal with. Sometimes I miss the date or the time. Any other questions from the committee? Dilhara, I got a question. You had this site plan on for the applicant.
Yes.
Is there a way to put Google Earth on? Because I agree with the comment. I mean, I think this footprint looks exactly like Unit 4, to be honest. And I don't know what somebody said it was 28 meters. It looks like it's longer than this building. So it looks like the exact same footprint as the building next door. It fits within their own building envelope, even though we're not dealing with the building envelope itself. And I agree, the front door facing south or east doesn't matter to me as long as it meets code. And in fact, I would agree facing east into a vacant ravine or a yard is less intrusive than having a family room or a bedroom facing that way, in my opinion. So I don't have a concern with it. I think we're just dealing with the building depth. Excuse me, and I think it fits in the neighborhood. It's a single family lot essentially on a condo plan. I don't have a problem with it. I would agree with those comments. And we're dealing with a 25 meter 0.01. I think it is 25.1. There might have been different iterations of it, but that's what's before us now. And I think it fits in the character of the neighborhood. So those are my only comments. I don't know if the committee has any more comments or questions or would like to make a motion.
Yeah, go further down so we can see that house.
Dylan?
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I am prepared to make the motion. Be it resolved that minor variance application A25-23 for 143 Lake Street, Unit 3 to permit a maximum building depth of 25.1 meters, whereas a maximum of 20 meters is permitted as per section 7.2.1, table 11 in zoning bylaw 1445 as amended be approved because it meets the 4 tests with the condition, there's one condition that town staff require a lot grading and drainage plan demonstrating that the water storm runoff will not negatively impact nor rely upon neighboring properties.
Thank you. Seconder? Adam? Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye or raise their hand. Opposed, if any, was carried. So there is a 20-day appeal period before it becomes final and binding. And I believe that's all the applications we have this evening, though there is one other minor other item, which is just a meeting date for your information in November. There being no further business, I would hereby adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Have a good evening.
I lived in that area for 18 years.
Yeah.
When they built those
You're still
houses-
on. You're still on.